Testing, testing, 1, 2. Alright, so this is Shady Strongman, and what I'm going to be going over today is the Sword and Shield Low Cup Viability rankings. Scarlet Violet is coming up soon, so we might as well have some documentation of what exactly the meta was before the new generation came in. First and foremost, we have S tier, and there is only one in S tier, and that is Mienfoo. Mienfoo is far and away the best mod in Little Cup. And just from this set, there does so much. High jump kick threatens offensively really well without any investment due to its 130 base power. U-turn, always great for momentum. If your opponent switches in their Mienfoo check, there's a lot of bulky poisons, and then there's also Larvesta and Morlul. You can U-turn on them coming in and get a lot of momentum out of them trying to stop your Mienfoo. Move 3, Knockout. Knockoff. Knockoff is one of the best moves in Little Cup, period. No, the best. The best. And the reason why it's so good is because Eviolite's everywhere. It makes everything so much bulkier, it can take so many hits, and if you knock off Eviolite, that means that you've already made a lot of progress. Fourth move is operable. Most of the time you use Fake Out because it's really good at just chipping things. It's just that little bit more HP that you need to get in order to secure your KOs. Very good. You can also use Taunt, Stone Edge. There's a lot of different options. It also has Regenerator, which is... Why did this ability exist? So, because it has Regenerator, that means that in addition to its pretty fantastic stats, 85 attack and then 50s in defense, it can take a lot of hits, and then whenever you need it to, it can regen off the damage with U-turn or just a raw switch, and then keep on taking more and more hits. It's pretty incredible. And there is very little downside to ever running a Mienfoo. It's pretty crazy. It also has a Choice Scarf set. This is only ever used when you're trying to do fight spam. You have Timber, and it sort of fills in what this is supposed to do normally as a bulky fighting type, of taking a whole bunch of different hits because of its great bulk. So it'll allow you to use Reckless Choice Scarf because you get high jump kick boosted by Reckless. It's pretty fantastic getting that. The downsides are that you don't have Regenerator, and it's very prediction reliant. If you ever have to deal with a Frillish, you are not having a good time. Ghost types, you do not deal with ghost types well at all. However, you get so in Little Cup, speed tiers are very bunched together because of how the speed stat works. So Mienfoo's 65 speed, that turns into 17. It's pretty crazy because that allows it to do a whole bunch of speed ties as well as outspeed a lot of things. And with Choice Scarf, that gets you up to 25, which outspeeds everything except for other Scarf mods. So it has a bit of variability, but 9 times out of 10 you're running Bulky Pivot. It's very good. It checks a whole bunch of the metagame. But then you have to get into what exactly is this, what is this hurt by? And that's checks and counters. So the main 4 that you have to watch out for are Coughing, Marionee, Larvesta, and Morlul. So Coughing, Marionee, Larvesta, Morlul. Fungus, it's dropped off. We'll get to that in a bit, but that can also check this. The main thing is that Coughing takes its attacks so well, and also Neutralizing Gas. It was added this generation, given to Coughing, and what that does is that it nullifies abilities, so that means that Regenerator is denied, which is pretty crazy, because that allows you to get a lot more progress on Foo. Any damage that gets onto it sticks. Marionee, it's still good, and it has 2 main advantages. First, it has Knockoff, best movements here, and also has Scald. So, while Coughing can do a lot of... Coughing stops it very well offensively because you force Regenerator does not work. Like, you force progress because Regenerator does not work, and that's the big selling point. Marionee can knock it off and Scald it, and it does really well. Like if you get either of these on a Foo, it's wonderful because it means that either its offensive output is terrible because of the Scald Burn, or it's defensive with Knock. It's pretty good. The issue is that what a lot of Foos can do is that they run Diglett, which is this little Diggy boy, and it'll trap Marionette and kill it, and then you don't have any way to answer Foo. So it's seeing less usage, but it's still pretty good because this has Regenerator itself as well as Recover. It's still good if in a no Diglett, but you got to be sparing with this usage. Fungus, I mean, it still resists high jump kick, and that's pretty good. And then you also get Spore support, but it's not fantastic for reasons we'll discuss in a bit. Regenerator plus Synthesis is always good, though. Flame Body Mons, this should probably just be Larvesta. Pony, like EVLA Ponytail, you still need to be wary of, but the main thing is that Larvesta takes both high jump kick and U-turn exceedingly well due to its typing, and it can burn you in at the same time. Doesn't even have to. So with Marionette, you have Regenerator, and that's good, but Flame Body is arguably better. I'd say around like the same tier, because if Minfu gets burned, then it makes a lot less progress, and it's pretty crazy. And then you just have to be wary of Psychic type attacks that you're going to take from Abra, Choice Scarf, Porygon. Staryu sometimes, like, it's not perfect, and it can be outsped and killed by Abra, Choice Scarf, Porygon, Staryu, but it checks a ridiculous amount. Like, going down the list, checks Pawniard, Grookey, Carvana if it's at full health, Ponyta, Staryu. It checks Mudbray, Onix, Drillbur, Munchlax. Kind of checks. No, if you're running non-Choice Scarf, Magnemite checks that. It checks Sandshrew Alola. It checks Stunky. Kind of. But there's just a bunch of stuff that it does really well against. And then also like the fighting weak Pokemon like Ferroseed, Porygon, Pawniard, and then Onix, stuff like that. It does so it's got such phenomenal matchups against those that's why it's an S tier. Why would you ever want to use anything else? Alright, so then first of A+ tier, Diglett. Despite its very lopsided stat spread, this is, if not number 2, it's very close to being top 3, I would say. Maybe top 5, but the main reason is that, as always, Arena Trap, it's not banned. Think of that what you will, but the main reason for that is these abysmal stats. But what does it have in advance? 4 different sets, and they're all viable. So first, we have Air Balloon. This one has seen less usage as of late, but it's not bad. Because Air Balloon means that you can counter opposing Diglett and you trap them, and you can't get trapped yourself. Isn't that just crazy? Wow. But you mainly run Earthquake, Final Gambit. Those are your 2 that should always stay on, with one exception. So you have your good attack, and then Final Gambit. I'm not sure if people even know what this move does a lot of the time, but you take your amount of HP, and then you subtract that from your opponent's HP, and even though you don't have a lot yourself, I think that you reached 19? Yeah, I'm pretty sure that you reached 19, because of how weird your HP stat is. No, it's hold on. Yeah, so then if we go to Diglett, Everlyn set, it gets up to 18. Yep. So even though it sounds like really weird on paper, why would you want to do that? It's exceedingly good at dealing with neutral targets. Like, if Foo is at 18 HP or less, you can just delete it with Final Gambit, and you don't have to deal with it the rest of the game. And it outspeeds the entire tier because it gets up to 20. There is no other Mon in Little Cup besides Elekid, which isn't on the viability rankings, that outspeeds this. Obviously, you have Boost, Rapid Spin, Boost Speed this gen. There's Dragon Dancers. Obviously, they'll go ahead of Diglett. But for the vast majority of the tier, they're not hitting before this, so you can Final Gambit into it, and it just removes it. It's pretty crazy. Beat Up. So the reason why you run Beat Up is because Abra runs a Focus Sash set sometimes, and then you can also hit Natu pretty well. And then also, for whatever reason, if somebody switches in a Weak Armor Mon, then you just ping it a whole bunch of times, and then you get to kill it next turn. So that's alright. People like to experiment with Sucker Punch more because it's really good priority. Like, it's just hard to say that Sucker Punch is bad. Like, 70 base power, priority attack. Even on the fastest Mon, that means that if somebody uses Mach Punch, what are the other ones? Ice Shard, that kind of stuff, you will go faster because of your speed tier. Because if they're both +1, you will go first because of how the priority works. It's pretty good. Then you also have Rock Slide and Substitute. Those are both pretty acceptable. Rock Slides are hitting Natu. Natu's the only viable flying type in the tier that's not... You have Natu and then Archon, but you don't want to use Archon defensively because of Defeatist. So it hits that pretty decently. And then Substitute means that you don't have to worry about prediction as much. So if your opponent tries to do some cheeky stuff with Natu, or if they have Shed Shell Abra, that's also a thing. So you have multiple forms of Abra you have to watch out for. But if they try switching out on your Shed, like they have Shed Shell, they switch out and you Substitute as they do that, you have some really good positioning. It's pretty crazy. Then we have Eviolite. This is just for general bulk. It's also... Oh, yes, Memento. That's one of the big changes. So Memento, what that's really good for is that you have some setup sweepers. You got... Porygon has an agility set. Grookey has a sword stance set. Kind of Carvana because it got speed boost. Tyrunt because it has a Dragon Dance set. Same for Onix. Shellos, which we'll get to later, is a monster, but you can set that up. And then you also have Igloo Shrew if you want to do that. But it provides some pretty good utility. It's pretty nice. Different option to Final Gambit, but Final Gambit's still good. Then for move 4, because Eviolite's kind of tankier, you can use Stealth Rock, which is pretty nice, because then typically the two best Stealth Rock setters, Pawniard and Pharisee, they can run some different coverage. Pharisee typically likes to run Spikes, so if you're running Stealth Rock, then that's just bonus, because then you get a really hazard stack on your opponent. And then you can also run Earth Power. Pawniard can run T-Wave. You can run T-Wave, you can run Psycho Cut. There's other options for Pawniard for helping up his other matchups if you free up your Stealth Rocker slot. And then there's also Earth Power. I'm not sure why this was huge originally on this set. However, it still does have some uses because something could use like Iron Defense Marionette. It's not very common. But also just dealing with very physically bulky threats and just using that instead. It's pretty alright. I wouldn't recommend it on this set. There's another set that you can use it on, though. Then we have Life Orb. It's a really fantastic cleaner. You have Substitute for making prediction so much better. You don't have to worry about it as much because your opponent has to attack into you to break the sub in order to even get to your Diglett. Beat Up an Earthquake, as always. You can switch this out for Sucker Punch, Rock Slide. You can also use Protect, because Meanfu wants to come in on this, and then it saves some damage. Now, the important part is that because Diglett reaches 18 HP, and Life Orb does 1/10 in recoil, you only lose 1 HP per attack. This also applies to Carvana, but it's very important because Diglett doesn't really mind this at all because of how low its HP stat is. So each time you use Earthquake, Sucker Punch, Rock Slide, you only take 1 HP, which means that you have 18 attacks that you can use before you faint, assuming no hazards. Pretty fantastic. And also your speed tier means that you outspeed the entirety of the tier, and they can't switch because of Arena Trap. So it's a great cleaner. It's pretty fantastic. Now, the problem with these 3 sets is that Grookey stuffs them really well because it sets up grassy terrain, so that way Earthquake isn't as good. That's why you would use Earth Power, actually. So that way you can still kill the poison types and stuff like that, because even with Grassy Terrain up, Earth Power can still deal really good damage. But all of them get really stuffed by Grassy Terrain Grookey. So, they decided that to deal with this, they would make a specially offensive set because it gets Sludge Bomb, and you can hit Grookey. This is why it has Gen 1 move syndrome, where it just gets everything under the sun, and they never decided to remove anything. So you have Sludge Bomb to hit that. Wonderful. It has Sludge Bomb, Earth Power, Protect. Then you can do Final Gambit or Memento. Final Gambit is basically a necessity, but Memento's also good if you want to specifically deal with Grookey. Something comes in, you Memento on that, and then you can go to a sweeper. But Final Gambit's preferred. Because although this is really funny and cheeky, it's nowhere near as effective due to its lesser special attack. So you gotta be careful. The main things that you have to worry about: Grookey, other Arena Trap users, so you have to worry about Air Balloon Diglett. There's also Trapinch, which is legal, and then you also have Trace Defensive Porygon. And what Defensive Porygon does is that it copies your Arena Trap and it counter traps you. So you have to be careful when you're using it, because if your opponent has a Porygon on the other side and they trace your Arena Trap, you're just stuck. Porygon is kind of hard for Diglett to deal with, because the Scarf set outspeeds this, because it gets up to 14 naturally, and then with Choice Scarf it gets up to 21, so it outspeeds this 20, and then it can use Ice Beam and Oko, and then Trace just counter traps it. Plus, it's really bulky, so that's the other kryptonite of Diglett. Although it's got some amazing speed and utility, it needs a lot of support to be able to start killing things because of how low its attack is. With that being said, the Arena Trap utility and the speed tier make up for so much, it's pretty insane. A+ tier for sure. It's not S tier because it doesn't have anywhere near as much as the defensive utility as Mienfoo, but it's still great. Next we have Ferroseed. Oh boy, Ferroseed. It only has one real set, which is it's just the tank set, but it's so good as is that you don't really need to run anything else. So you have Giga Drain. So because of how it's got 24 special attack, that's awful. In Little Cup, this matters significantly less, so you can use it as a pretty reliable recovery option. Knockoff, best move, Thunder Wave. So that's probably the most important move on this moveset. Do not remove Thunder Wave or Knockoff. Don't remove those two. Because Thunder Wave prevents Ponyta from setting up on you. It uses a Flame Charge moveset, so it can get up to +1. So if you are at full health, it can take a hit from that, because of how low the base power is, and then Thunder Wave it back and prevent a sweep. Also, it's just generally good utility for covering if Fu wants to switch in, which it really likes because fighting type on Steel, or, let's see, Pawniard. Abra sometimes can... So the issue is that Abra will sometimes want to come in on like hazards or stuff because it has Fire Punch, so that can threaten you. But this can do a lot of progress just with Thunder Wave to open up your other teammates. It's very good. And then you have Stealth Rocker Spikes, so that depends on your team structure. So you want Stealth Rock most of the time, and Stealth Rock is actually really important in this tier, and there is, I want to say the 2 reasons for it. So the 2 reasons are Natu and Larvesta is why you want to have Stealth Rocks, especially with Ferroseed. First and foremost, Natu has Magic Bounce, and it's significantly faster and can take a lot of hits from Ferroseed because of how bulky it is, and Knockoff doesn't do enough. But if you get Stealth Rock up and it wants to switch in, it's going to have a significantly harder time of doing so because it takes 25%. In addition, Larvesta exists, and it has a crippling 4x Stealth Rock weakness. It needs them off. And if you can get them up, you get some free turns out of that, you can run away with the game. Now, what is Pharisee's role? Its special defense investment allows it to take a whole bunch of hits from, let's see here, Porygon, Abra, Carvana, Frillish, Staryu, Magnemite, Fungus. It takes a lot of special attacks. It's pretty crazy. And then Gekichin keeps it moderately healthy. So that's pretty cool. Quick word of caution, there's a Magnemite set specifically to trap this Pharisee. If you ever get caught in that, just don't break the sub and you're fine. You have enough Stealth Rocks, you have enough Thunder Waves, you can do stuff. It's fine. Otherwise, checks and counters Natu, as I said before. Fire and fighting types, both Mienfoo and Timber will really like this, as well as Ponyta and Vulpix. They're fine with coming in. And then, yes, coverage moves. So, the main things that you have to worry about are Abra and Coughing. These analyses say Galarian Ponyta. We can I'll get to that in the regular Ponyta section, but just don't worry about that one. But then Abra and Coughing. So Abra runs Fire Punch, and you think, oh, that's kind of stupid. It's a special attacker. Why is it running Fire Punch? Because with Life Orb, it can break things because of the 4x weakness. Very dumb, very stupid. Gen 1 Mon Syndrome, but you have to be wary of it. Coughing will typically run Fire Blast if it's feeling very nervous about missing. It'll run Flamethrower, and then sometimes it'll drop Fire Blast for Will-O-Wisp or Thief, something to that effect. However, don't bet on that. It typically wants to run Fire Blast specifically to smack this, as well as some other stuff, but smacking this is a very good benefit of it. So you have to be very careful of that. Also, if this gets knocked off, it becomes significantly worse as a wall, so be careful of that. If there's anything in the tier that doesn't want to take a knockoff besides Foo, it's this. This does not want it. But still, it's got fantastic typing, fantastic resistances, and ungodly amounts of bulk. Very good. Very much consider it on your team. Next we have Coughing. So this is the best check to Mienfoo that we currently have, and I'm perfectly fine with seeing best even though there are other ones. And that's for a few reasons. Neutralizing Gas, allowing so much progress on Mienfoo, is definitely the best benefit of it. Like, even though you can knock it off with Marianne or something like Grookey, like just knocking off Eviolite, that's still good. Making sure that it stays at like 50% is so much better, because then it can't keep coming in again and again and again. Make use of Fake Out to stall some turns, get some damage, go out, regen. Being able to stall that out, fantastic. Nothing better. Then we have the coverage moves. You have Sludge Bomb, Fire Blast, Thunderbolt, meaning that if you want to switch into this, you're going to have a lot of trouble. Now, there are a few dedicated switch-ins to Coughing, because Coughing is just that good. Porygon, it can take it so well. Frillish, Frillish can... It doesn't like the Thunderbolts, but most of the time, you can kind of risk it, because if Coughing runs a coverage move, Thunderbolt's the one that goes the most, because Fire Blast is so important for the steals. Staryu, kind of, because you're very fast and you threaten it on its much weaker special defense. It's got pretty great defense, though. And then you have Mudbray. This is on the decline to my knowledge. I've never really seen it used, and I think this because it's just overshadowed, but it's a really good Coughing switch-in because it has a special defense set that you can run that's Rest Talk, and you can soak up hits really easily. Very good. Onix, it resists all of this, and then you can set up rocks, you can Earthquake into it. It's all very good. And then perhaps the best one, Drillbur. You have to be very wary of Drillbur, because it takes Sludge Bombs for days, it's immune to Thunderbolt, and then you set up rocks, and it can get a lot of advantage off Coughing just sort of sitting there and trying to attack into it. That's the only real set that you have to worry about, but then you have coverage options. So it has Will-O-Wisp, it also has Thief. It's got a pretty large move pool that it can really deal with. It gets Explosions, so if you want to be really cheeky with that, go for it. It gets Memento. Alright, what else does it get? It gets Taunt, which can be kind of nice. It gets Thief. Probably said that already. But it has a lot of options it can use, which is all pretty nice. Now, checks and counters. It gets chipped really easily, so the 4th move slot is always Pain Split. Now, Pain Split's a pretty good move, but it's nowhere near as consistent as Recover. I don't think you can ever get like 50% HP with this, unless you're dealing with like Munchlax, and that's it. It does break sashes and stuff like that, so that's not bad. However, because of how Pain Split functions, it can stay low really easily. Mudbray is second best. It's one of the best. I'd say like top 3. Like, number 1 Drillbur, number 2 Onyx, number 3 Mudbray in terms of coughing switch-ins. That probably can be updated, but it has a Rest Talk set that allows it to rest and sleep talk, and it has Earthquake and Heavy Slam. And that can threaten this really well, because it runs Neutralizing Gas and not Levitate. It'll still get hit by Ground-type moves. Psychic-type moves, Natu especially it has to be wary of, because Natu can run Special Defense in order to be able to switch into this. And it's not very happy about that, especially because Natu can restop the damage, and if you try to Thunderbolt into it, it just takes it because it's no longer super effective. Abra, you do have to worry about because it outspeeds, but Abra does not like switching in, so that's kind of 50-50. Porygon really likes switching in because of how much bulk it has, and then you can hit on its much softer defenses. Very good. And then, of course, Frillish. It's just so good as a mon for getting progress on Fu, as well as being a coverage just for, like, basically all fighting and grass-type moves. So, like, Grookey, Timber. I think that's, like, the main things, actually. Yeah. I was just gonna be like, yeah, hype it up. But, no, it's just that good at taking fighting-type moves, especially from Grookey and Timber, as well as Fu, that it's A+. And Neutralizing Gas, fantastic. Oh, also, one of the big things that it has to worry about is that Tyrant loves coming in on it because it resists all of its attacks and can start Dragon Dancing. If you run Will-O-Wisp, you don't have to worry about that. So, but because of all that, A+ tier, very good. Then we got Natu. Natu's weird. It's very good, but it's kind of weird. Yep, so bulky attacker. So the main draw to Natu is Magic Bounce. You block certain status moves. That includes like Thunder Wave, Stealth Rock, Spikes, Will-O-Wisp. Very, very, very strong. It cannot be understated how good that is as an ability. That if your opponent just tries to Stealth Rock, you can bounce them back and put them on your opponent's field. That does so much progress. And one of the most important things to note is that there are 2 viable spinners and like 1 viable defogger in this tier. Hazards are pretty strong. So having Magic Bounce as extra assurance is very good. Now, one thing of note, Drillbur has Mold Breaker, so that it bypasses that. But, even having that on everything else, bouncing back status moves, making it a pretty reliable switch-in, excellent. It also has a soft check to Fu, so in earlier tiers, it could do really well against Fu, and the reason for that is because Knockoff was 20 base power, so it can come in and threaten. However, because Knockoff got buffed, and because of the Little Cup speed tiers, you get to 17, these two tie. So it's much shakier, but Natu is still a very nice. If your opponent's trying to high jump kick into something, it's a very nice deterrent. It's not perfect, but it's pretty good. It's got some good spreads, good defense. It can run max defense as well, but it runs the special defense because it wants to switch into coughing a lot more often. And it can take hits from Grookey and Mienfoo anyway, so it's whatever. You like to run Psychic. This is for fightings and the poisons. You got Heat Wave, that's for Ferroseed, as well as Pawniard. Roost is just really good recovery. You turn Thunder Wave, so one of its biggest weaknesses is that Tyrant, like coughing, Tyrant wants to come in on it because these are pretty soft hits. They're not super effective. So if you run Thunder Wave, it'll mean that Tyrant can't set up on you, but you're giving up quite a bit because U-turn's really good. Because otherwise, Porygon wants to come in, and then you can Thunder Wave yourself, which is really bad because you want your 17 speed. If you Thunder Wave into Frillish, you get very little progress because it doesn't mind taking it. You can Thunder Wave into Drillbur. It literally doesn't matter to it. Its ground type doesn't get parried, so that's all pretty bad. But you stop Tyrant from sweeping you. You stop Porygon actually. So if your opponent's running Agility set, it doesn't really mind coming in on this because this can't do too much to retaliate. But Thunder Wave can really stop it in its tracks. It also gets a Setup Sweeper set. So this one's kind of weird, and you can run it a little bit differently. I think they had... So how it worked before is that you had either Cosmic Power, Stored Power, or Combined Psychic. Both of those worked, but essentially what you would do is that with Cosmic Power, Stored Power, you'd get up to maximum defenses and then start shredding things, and then you also have Heat Wave in case you need to deal with a Pawniard. And because of how bulky you are, you just have to hope your opponent doesn't crit you, and then you're fine. Very dumb, very powerful. It was okay, and the main reason it's only okay is because Fu could very easily speed tie it, and then you just get smacked, and that's it. And you also need you need quite a bit of support in order to be able to do this. It's kind of a sitting duck for a few turns. It wants to keep Cosmic Powering, but it can very easily get smacked during that time. It can get knocked off to nullify a boost. It doesn't take the hits too well because it only has 45 defenses and 40 HP. Fu can take them likely a lot better because it gets a bit more in its stats. And this isn't awful, especially because you can sweep with it. And once it's set up, how do you break through it besides a crit? So, it can work, but you gotta be careful. Then you have dual screen support. This is one of 3 screens users that you can do. It's either Natu, Staryu, or Abra. You want this one because Magic Bounce bounces Defog from Timber. So that means that even if they do that, Reflect and Light Screen don't go up. Hold on. No, sorry. So because you have Magic Bounce, you can't defog away your screens. Because it just gets reflected and then hazards go away, but your screens still stay. So that's pretty good. Teleport Thunder Wave is all pretty self-explanatory, I think. Oh, no, it's really not. So what you use Teleport for is that this isn't going to be doing anything except set up screens, and then if your opponent starts sitting up on this, you Thunder Wave them, and then you don't have to worry about it. However, if you use the reason why you use Teleport is that if your opponent starts doing whatever... Oh, no, I'm sorry. I'm mumbling over my words. Teleport will allow you to take a hit and switch into something more valuable. So, say a Tyrant or a Swords Dance Grookey. And that means that Natu, which is significantly less valuable to your team, it'll take the hit, and your other mon gets in for essentially free. And you still keep your screens up. It's pretty fantastic. Now, what are the issues with it? 17 speed tier is a bit of a yikes. It's good, but it's not exceedingly fantastic. So it has to do with opposing Natu, which is not great, especially because it's like Natu sort of checks itself. The best you can kind of do is Heat Wave the opposing one, and then you turn out and hope that you lose the speed tie, but... Stealth Rock weak, be careful. Knockoff. It's weak to knockoff, and it hates taking it every single time because it gets less bulkier as a result. Pawniard versus Natu is a war that will never end, and it's in neither one of their favors, but definitely not Natu a lot of the time because it doesn't want to come in. Poniard has a specific set just to come in on these heat waves. It's pretty interesting. Porygon has a really good matchup into this. Defensive takes all of its hits exceedingly well, and it can't get status because it traces Magic Bounce. And it also has Ice Beam in order to attack into this really well. And then also, if you really want to, you could use Teleport on this. So if this tries to U-turn out, you teleport on the U-turn, and you get a bunch of momentum off of that. It's pretty great. Poniard... This is a bit of an in-depth interaction. I'll get into that in the Poniard section. But let's just say... Poniard can kill Natu, but Natu can also kill Poniard. Onix takes all of Natu's attacks super well. And then it can threaten it with Rock Blast afterwards, or Dragon Dance. And it's immune to T-Wave, so you can't even get out that way. And then Electric-type attacks. Electric coverage from Coughing and Staryu is very bad against this. It doesn't want to take those hits. It may have a bit of special defense investment, but doesn't like taking them. Alright, so then next we have Poniard. The other of the two defensive seals, Iglooshire down here and Magnemite, are more offensive. It has a pretty simple set. It's just one. It's Berry Juice. It has special defense investment, and it's Berry Juice. And the reason why you want to do that is because not to use Heat Wave. If you run Eviolite... Hold on. Come on now. If you run Eviolite, this cannot take 2 Heat Waves, which is a problem. But if you run Berry Juice, it can take 3. It'll die after 3 because Heat Wave doesn't always kill. Very dumb, very stupid, but it allows it to come in, take a Heat Wave, and then threaten a knock, and then you can almost certainly get progress, or Stealth Rock for that matter, because it doesn't want to stay in. It has a lot of mind games, but you can deal with it. But you have Knockoff, Iron Head, Sucker Punch, Stealth Rock. Sucker Punch is exceedingly good for revenge killing. If Tyrant is low enough, if Grookey is low enough, you can deal with both of them, and it's pretty nice. And then Iron Head is pretty good stab. If Mienfoo ever gets paralyzed, you can do Paraflinch hacks, and it's also nice for hitting anything neutrally. It hits Tyrant, it hits the Rock type, it hits Onix. It doesn't hit too much else, but it just hits a lot of things neutrally that's pretty good. It's pretty simple. You can run Defiant or Inner Focus. Defiant's not used too often. Well, I don't want to say too often. The main issue is that both Defiant and Inner Focus have such niche cases of when you want to use them that there's no real reason to use either. Like, Defiant, if you get defogged on by Timber, you get a +2, which is cool, but when are you going to use that? And then Inner Focus, who wants to fake out into this anyway? Like, it helps in the mirror match, so that way you don't get Iron Head flinched. But that's kind of it. Now, despite the fact that Mienfoo, a fighting type, is #1 in the tier, and this is Dark Steel, has quadruple fighting weakness, it's still A+, because of how good it is at taking special attacks from Abra, Porygon, Frillish, kind of takes stuff from Staryu, but not particularly. Takes some stuff from Magnemite, because Magnemite likes running Steel coverage, well, Steel Stab, but it takes those attacks really well. It can be threatening an Immortal, and just additional knock pressure from a 14 speed is always really nice. Now, it has to really worry about fighting types, especially Timber. Timber's main thing that it likes over Mienfoo is Mach Punch, and that's really good against this. If you Mach Punch into this, it's bad. This cannot stay in very easily. It's not good. Mienfoo also really likes switching in because it can take knocks really easily because it resists them, and most of the time you're kind of okay with losing your Eviolite, and then it just high jump kicks and threatens a lot of damage. It gets trapped. So Diglett can, but it needs either Eviolite or to set up a substitute in order to trap this reliably because of Sucker. But with that being said, it can still remove this, and you don't want that to happen. Trapinch gets superpower, so it'll just OHKO it immediately, and you don't want that either. And it can take hits really easily. Fire-type Pokemon in coverage also deal with this pretty well. Ponyta can Flare Blitz into it. Vulpix and Charmander. Charmander less so, because it doesn't like Sucker. But they can all just attack into this with a Fire-type attack, and it's fine. Coughing and Natu. Coughing's Fire Blast, it doesn't OHKO. That's also one of the benefits of Berry Juice. Is that Fire Blast, you can tank and still do other stuff. But you would prefer not to take those hits if possible. Also having, excuse me. Also having Poison type immunity is always really nice. Next we have Porygon. It's falling off a little bit, and that's not because it's bad. It's just because it has 3 different sets you can run, and 2 out of 3 are seeing less use. So main one is the defensive set, because it's got some ungodly amounts of bulk, and then its natural special attack is already pretty great. So you run a lot of HP defense, special defense, and then you can do Tri-Attack, typically Ice Beam. As I was mentioning in the Diglett section, you can Counter Trap, you need Ice Beam to get the KO. Then you run Thunder Wave and Recover, and it just becomes so hard to break. And then Trace, you want to come in on Marianne or Fungus and trace their Regenerator? Go for it! It's fine! And then also what can happen is that Coughing doesn't like being faced up against Porygon, but because of neutralizing gas, it doesn't trace anything. So it'll switch out, go into Fu, which also has Regenerator because it can high jump kick or knock off into this, and it'll get Regenerator that way. It's still very annoying to deal with. Trace is very good on this. Tri-Attack, 120 base power, and then you have 20% chance to Hax your opponent, which is pretty funny. And then move 2, you can reuse Teleport if you want. It's not awful. You can also use Psychic for hitting Coughing harder and Mewtwo harder. However, Ice Beam I think is probably the preferred option. Oh, excuse me. It hits Natu, it hits Diglett. It hits Chiron actually. It doesn't want to set up on that. But you can use things, you can hit things with Ice Beam, it's pretty good. Thunder Wave to prevent more setup sweepers. Tyrant, Onyx, no, Tyrant, Grookey. If you want to para stuff like Timber, Shellos, and Munchlax, go ahead. But also it's really good at dealing with like Scarf Pokemon as well. It can take a hit and Thunder Wave them in return. That's nice. And then Recover to keep you healthy. It checks a lot. It takes special attacks like it's nobody's business. It takes attacks from Carve, Furlish, Staryu. If your opponent's Ponyta is using Flash Fire and it tries to Flare Blitz into you, you blank it on the spot, and that's fantastic. Stamina from Mudbray versus Trace is bad for the Mudbray user because then this just becomes superly bulky. It's very interesting. Alright, so that's... Alright, then we have Agility. This is a weird set because you can kind of run Berry Juice, kind of. So how typically you would do this is that you get your download boost, and then your opponent thinks, oh, this is the Choice Scarf set. It can only ever lock into one move, and it's also pretty fast already, so I don't want to have to deal with that, so I'll switch into something like, I don't know, Pawniard, expecting a Tri-Attack, and then you pull out Agility, and then you can Thunderbolt into it and kill it. It's a very good set that makes things very tricky as to whether you're using Agility or Choice Scarf, and it makes both of them better. But what do you want on this? You get Agility, so you get +2, so you run 13 speed with Modest. So you get up to 26 speed, meaning that you outspeed a whole bunch of stuff. Even Scarfu can't touch you, which is great. But then you have Tri-Attack for pretty reasonable stab. Download is the other ability that you use instead of Trace, and that means that you can possibly get a +1. So you're functionally using a Choice Specs. Wonderful! Then move 3, Ice Beam or Psychic is what you typically prefer, because then you can go over Fu, and you get to really dent Ferroseed. You can bluff Choice Scarf with this really well because of Tri-Attack Ice Beam. It's great. Then, 4th move is operable. If you have Berry Juice, the reason why you run that is so that way you can run your fourth coverage move instead of your third coverage move instead of recover, because you need Thunderbolt for stuff like Frillish, Pawniard, Staryu. No, there's another one as you want to hit. Well, maybe Shellos, but Shellos and Marinade, but you don't really mind Shellos or Marinade too much. So you can attack into those. Psychic again for fightings and poisons. And by running Berry Juice, you can take Mewtwo Fake Outs pretty alright, because it thinks that you're Eviolite, it Fake Outs into you, and then it procs your Berry Juice, and then you're back to full health anyway. So that's pretty good. You gotta be careful because Ferroseed, opposing Trace Porygon, and Pawniard take the attacks pretty well, though. Finally, you have Choice Scarf set. It's basically never going to change. Tri-Attack, Ice Beam, Thunderbolt, Psychic. The coverage is... You got Bolt Beam plus neutral Tri-Attack, which is always really good into like everything because it's 120 base attack, 120 base power, and then you can just Hax people, and then Psychic if you want to remove the Foo and Coughing. It's really good. It's technically Scarf and Specs because of download. Now, it's seeing less usage lately, and I think the reasons for that are that Frillish and Timber have become more prevalent in the metagame, because Timber is like a pseudo-revenge killer with Mach Punch Iron Fist, and it does really well into all forms of Porygon. And then Frillish blanks Porygon that don't have Thunderbolt, and that's not fun. However, it can do a lot of damage if it's at +1, because it's got, what is that, base 85 special attack. Boost that to +1, and you're also max special attack. Yikes, there's not much that wants to take those hits. It's not fun. The issue is that a lot of stuff started using EV spreads to deny download, and that's why it's getting less usage. Not to, especially, used to run defense, not run special defense to deal with coughing, and also deny the download boost, so it's not as good. And then you're using a 14-speed Scarfer, when you could probably use something like Ponyta, Tyrant. You can use, what other Scarfers are there? Like there's Mudbray, Magnemite. You got other Scarf options, and you'll prefer not to use this if it doesn't have the boost. Munchlax somehow... So Munchlax is a weird case, I'll get to it in a bit. It has a lot of HP and a lot of SPDF, and that's why it's really good. And it just takes all of Porygon's hits exceedingly well. You can't break through it. Same for Frillish. Steel types you can wear down, but it's very sketch. It's very hard to do so. Especially because Magnemite, it can run a Berry Juice moveset, and that takes all of Porygon's attacks exceedingly well. You gotta be careful with that then. Excuse me. Otherwise, it has a lot of offensive pressure, and then Trace checks a whole bunch of stuff. So it's still really good. It's just, it's dropping off a little bit because it wants to check a lot more stuff, and the download sets aren't as good. So that's all of A+ tier. Then we get to A tier. First off, we have Abra. Abra is Gen 1. And that means it's got a stupid move pool, as I said earlier. So it can run Focus Punch or Fire Punch and or Drain Punch. Hooray! All of these sets essentially do the same thing, which is just you use Psychic and Shadow Ball for really good neutral coverage, and then you have move 3 and move 4 as whatever you want. Focus Punch, substitute on your Shed Shell. So Focus Punch Oko's Pawn, regardless if it has Eviolite or Berry Juice, just because of how high the base power is. So that's kind of dumb. Fire Punch can really dent Ferroseed, and you don't want your Ferroseed dented. It also gets Substitute, which is really good because you can sub Focus Punch, so you can go back to Generation 3 and start punching Pawniard like it's nobody's business. It's very dumb. You have a Focus Sash set. If you want, it takes an attack and then you counter. So you just spot remove something, as long as hitting you physically. And otherwise, you're still an Abra, so you're Psychic Shadow Ball very fast. You reach 19 speed and a lot of special attack because you have 105. Oh boy. Otherwise, you can use Life Orb, and The reason why you like Life Orb is because it punches stupid amounts of holes into everything, and then Magic Guard blocks Life Orb recoil. You gotta be really careful when playing around this. But it does have some flaws. Most notably, Poniard Pharisee. If it's not running proper coverage, it can't break through either of them, which is kind of annoying. It can take down like one, and if it's running Focus Sash, it gets kind of hard walled by Pharisee, not Pharisee, Poniard if it doesn't want to attack into it. But Pharisee can also set up Stealth Rock, set up spikes, Thunderwave it to make it slower. Priority attacks are also a really good way of dealing with it. Poniard has Sucker, so if you want to go for like a raw Drain Punch... Alright, so analysis on Life Orb's a little bit outdated. So before you run Submission, because the 80 base power had some weird rolls because this is Little Cup, and it would still KO the Eviolite variant of Poniard. However, it stopped running that, instead run Berry Juice, so you can use Drain Punch instead. But if you want to just raw do that, then it can always Sucker Punch, but you have to play a lot of games because Abra really likes running Substitute, and because it uses Drain Punch now, it likes it a lot more, because you can keep on using Drain Punch to get more substitutes. So there's that. Choice Scarf users really like taking into this. Scarf Minifu can just U-turn out, and it's kind of impossible to punish properly, because it just outspeeds you, U-turns, kills your Abra, because Abra has 15... Is it 15? 15 base defense and 25 base HP. It's just going to die. And because of that, can't really punish it well, but it's not used too often. Scarf Magnemite's pretty good against this. It resists all of its... Well, it resists Psychic. It takes neutral damage from Shadow Ball, but I think it's got enough natural bulk to take it. And then the physical moves aren't quadruple effective, so it can't deal with it effectively. And then Porygon just likes... It can really attack into it well. If it gets a previous download boost, Abra can't do much. Trappers. So Diglett is probably the best one. You feel like Diglett can switch into this because of how good its special defense is. But you also have to worry about Trapinch. Trapinch is seeing less usage lately because things like running Protect and Diglett's speed tier is just so much better, but it still has first impression. So if you're running up against a Life Orb or a Shed Shell variant, you can just first impression into it, and it'll die, especially if it doesn't have any good first impression switch-ins, so. Also, Abra dies to beat up. As I mentioned before, it runs Focus Sash, so you can beat over that with beat up. Very unfortunate, very sad. But Abra can still break a lot of holes. You should very much fear it. Next, we got Carvanha. I feel like this is probably the second most new meta development. I think that people were still using Larvesta even way back then. But this is like the newest one. Well, newest in like quotation marks. And the reason why that is because it got Flip Turn. And otherwise it was considered pretty bad because Timber exists. So what this does is that because of Speed Boost, Land Life Orb, and because it gets Water, Dark, and Psychic coverage, it can essentially hit the entire metagame for some form of unresisted damage. And it's so hard to hit because of Speed Boost. So it just tears through a lot of the metagame. Its only real good checks are Pharisee, Poniard can kind of do it, Porygon can kind of do it, but I wouldn't recommend it. Grookey threatens it back offensively because it has Grassy Glide. And then Magnemite can kind of take it because it has Berry Juice, but I wouldn't recommend it. And then Timber has Mach Punch. There's like 5 options for this. It's not great. But the reason why it's not used terribly often and why it's not higher is because it's got exceedingly low defenses. Somehow Abra has beaten the regular defense department, but Carvanha is not far behind. So there's that. Also, your IVs are set to low HP, and that's so you get the Life Orb interaction as you got before, so it only deals 1 HP. Very interesting. Now, with that being said, you get Flip Turn, which makes it ungodly to deal with. Imagine trying to switch in your food to this, and then you just go to coughing. Deal with it. Then you got Crunch. It's really good neutral coverage. It allows you to 3-hit KO Pharisee, so it doesn't want to come in very often. I mean, you blanket a Pawniard, but it hits, like... It's hard to really deal with, because it hits a lot of things neutrally that it would otherwise be able to take it. Like, Grookey doesn't want to take that. I don't think a single one of these mons, barring, like, Mudbray, wants to take it. Oh, Mudbray, Moralol, and Timber. Stunky doesn't like it too much because it's not very bulky. But everything else doesn't want to take it. Excuse me. Let me just take a quick drink here. Much better. But its 2-stabs are just great at dealing with a metagame. Oh, but I can't break through Fu! Oh, well, now you got Psychic Fangs. You get Psychic Fangs now, so that means you can eat Fu for breakfast. Fu has to have at least 18 HP, I think. I think your minerals... You have one mineral, which is 76%, and then everything else is 18, I think, on Eviolite Fu. Fu has to be really careful around this. And then you have Protect, so that way you can blank Fake Outs from Fu, stall grassy terrain turns, and get your speed boost. It's insane, and the only reason why it's not broken is because Pharisee, Grookey, and Timber exist. That's it. It's pretty insane otherwise. Actually, I kind of went over that all really well. Huh. One thing that you have to be wary of, Moralol is sometimes run on teams to deal with Fu and this. So, if you want to run like Marionette, Coughing, Fungus, or Larvesta, they're all weak to this. So in order to try and not lose immediately, you can run Moralol on carve weak teams. And it rolls it exceedingly well because of how naturally bulky it is. Otherwise, I don't think that, like, this is really strong on paper, but people know that this is coming, so you have to play very carefully with it. Also, Dark Immunity means it can come in on Natu sometimes, and that's funny. Like, it eats Natu for breakfast. It's very dumb. Alright, so then next... Grookey, the one that everybody hates, we got Bonky Kong. So, what's wrong with Bonky Kong? It's got Grassy Surge, Grassy Glide. So it just gets priority attacks that have, what, 93 base power because of the terrain? So you're hitting for, like, 140... 148, 150 with stab, which is pretty ridiculous. So get ready for that. And then it has Life Orb. This does not have the Life Orb interaction. It's got too much HP. So it'll still take 2. But it doesn't really matter because Grassy Glide knockoff is just wonderful as it is. And it can break holes really easily. Even Coughing does not want to switch into a Life Orb knockoff terribly well. It does not want to do that. Otherwise, you got Drain Punch, U-Turn, Protect. As of recent, because Trapinch is being overshadowed by Diglett, and First Impression isn't as valuable, some people will not run Protect and instead will run Woodhammer. And the reason for that is because of how hard it hits stuff like Coughing and Marionette, so that way you can bypass your checks if they're low enough. Very dumb. Drain Punch, U-Turn. So you want Drain Punch because then you just bypass Pawniard. You don't have to deal with it anymore. U-Turn is really good for gaining momentum, and it's used on the Eviolite set. And I would much rather prefer it there, because if you want to use your Life Orb, you just sort of come in and start breaking. You don't really want to U-Turn out. Like, this is typically the threat that you want in, not exactly the one that you want to go to. But, with that being said, it still has a good amount of utility of, oh darn, the Coughing's going to come in, so I'm just going to U-turn on that, go into like Frillish, Onyx, whatever, and then be able to threaten that, and it's fine. Oh, quick word of note. So the ground types, Drillbur, Mudbray, and Onyx, they also have high horsepower and Earthquake, so if they're paired with Grookey, they'll use high horsepower because Grassy Surge and Grassy Terrain blocks Earthquake damage. That also means it's a great support Pokemon. Wow! It supports stuff like Ponyta, Tyrant, And then kind of Magnemite, but not really. But the grassy terrain is just very good. Oh, it also supports Marinade. But it ruins Diglett. And like these two are sort of like eternally at war because of it. But because of that, it makes trapping a lot harder. It gives you passive recovery. So even though you're taking 2 life orb damage per turn, it doesn't really matter. You're functionally taking 1 because the grassy terrain. How much does... You get grassy terrain to recover some HP. I'm pretty sure it's only 1. So functionally you just take 1 from life orb, which is kind of stupid. And it makes it very hard to break. If you're, like, you have to deal with this offensively. You can't do it defensively well. Very dumb, very stupid, very powerful. Then you have the Eviolite set. I think this is probably the worst of the 3. But it's still good because you can still Grassy Glide knock off so that we can hit the enemy team really well and then knock them off to make them much squishier. Drain Punch to not be blocked by Pawn. U-turn Swords Dance. You can use Swords Dance. So you have 2 options for the Swords Dance set. You can either use Grassy Seed or you can use Eviolite. Eviolite I would recommend less because one of the biggest problems with it is its lack of breaking power without the Swords Dance. Like with the Life Orb boost that you get on your Grassy Glide here, it's pretty fantastic, and it allows it to revenge kill and just bonk things. Most notably, like Tyrant, it single-handedly invalidates all of the Shell Smashers along with Ferroseed, because how is Omanite going to deal with a priority, quadruple effective, 70 base power, grassy terrain boosted, stab boosted bonk? It's not going to happen. I mean, like, the only ones that are really viable... Yeah, the only one that is viable is Dwebble, because it's not weak to it. Nothing else. It's very dumb. Eviolite's not bad, because it's a pretty bulky Pokemon that can take a decent amount of hits, and then you still have a lot of utility of Knockoff and Drain Punch. And then you also get U-turn, because then you actually get to switch into threats that you want to deal with. So, like, you can U-turn your Grookey off of a Coughing into an Abra, into a Porygon, into a Natu, and it's fine. But then the big one is the Grassy Seed set. And the reason why that one's important is because you get access to Acrobatics. And Acrobatics' flying type allows it to bypass some checks. Let's go! So we have Larvesta and Morlor, the 2 big ones that you have to worry about. But it still hits Fu and Timber, as well as does really good neutral damage versus Coughing. And you also got Ferroseed in the mix too. And you got Drain Punch to hit Pawniard. And you get Swords Dance. And you get the Grassy Seed. Oh, the Grassy Seed is actually really important because that means you get your defense boost of Eviolite, but you're not weak to knock. So you can take them all day. There's 65 base power and you have the defense boost. Oh, and then the Swords Dance actually allows you to do a lot of threatening because Acro, Grassy Glide, it's just so good. Its main issues are that there's actually, like, Trappers... The funny thing is it's because of the Diglett set and First Impression from Trapinch. But also Fire types do really well into it. Natu resists its attacks. Grassy Glide isn't anywhere near as good when you're going into resist. That also speed ties you, so do you really want to risk your Grookey? I don't think so. Coughing is a hard wall. Marianne, it's not as good. We'll probably get to it in a sec, but Grookey deals with that because it's a grass neutrality as opposed to a resist, so. But Fungus, oh, I forgot, Fungus is also why you want to run Acro. Fungus is not like Acro one bit, but otherwise it hard walls Grookey because it does a quad resist it, and you just Sludge Bomb it and it dies. It doesn't have enough bulk. Very sad. But Grookey's support capabilities, because of Grassy Terrain weakening Earthquake, as well as passive recovery, allows some stuff like Tyrant to go absolutely apeshit. It's crazy. Otherwise, its stats are kind of middling, but don't let that fool you. It gets 17 speed. Be careful of this monster. Bonky Kong will bonk your day. Last one that we have is Marionette. Come on now. Don't be like this. You know, Toxapex, it's mini packs. It's nowhere near as good because its stats aren't where you want it to be. But it's still pretty good. Scald, Sledge Bomb, Knockoff, Recover. It's a Minfu wall that soaks hits up pretty well because of Regenerator, can heal them off with Recover, and because of its poison water typing, it deals with Foos moves pretty well. Supports with Knockoff and Sludge Bomb and Scald, so that means that you can status the enemy team, remove their items, and still remain healthy. It's very hard to go wrong with this, but its main issue is trappers just really love it. It's like it's one of 3 poisons in the tier that you really want to use for Fu, and it's the only one that gets trapped, and that's sort of its death sentence. It's very sad. So niche interaction that you have to be wary about. If you have rocks up against your opponent and they have an Abra that has Focus Sash, Coughing can break the Focus Sash because it has neutralizing gas. So Abra will typically want to run Magic Guard. And that's for a variety of reasons. A, no hazards. B, no Life Orb recoil. And it also bluffs your set. So if you're running Inner Focus, then obviously you're not Focus Sash. Because... Not a Focus Sash. If you're Inner Focus, you're not Focus Sash. Because you would take chip from hazards and stuff. But because of neutralizing gas, it makes that set really bad. Whereas with Marionette, it can come in afterwards and just start wrecking. It can be very dangerous to face. It's not fun. That's probably it's a really important difference that you have to keep in mind. But it's manageable. But you have to worry, first and foremost, Daylight's too fast. Trapinch doesn't have to... You don't have to worry about Trapinch too much because it's very slow and you scald it anyway, so you're going to be doing a lot of damage to it. Psychic-type Pokemon in coverage, Abra, Porygon, Natu, all of them love Psychic into this. Mudbray, I would argue that Drillbur is probably better, but Mudbray can still take the hit really well and then high horsepower into this. You don't want that. Coughing is even pretty good against this because it denies its Regenerator and it can attack with Thunderbolt, which is bad. Pharisee walls this pretty well because no Sludge Bomb, it resists Scald, and then you can't knock off it too well for progress, so there's that. And then any electric type Pokemon in coverage, Marionette just crumples to pretty well, pretty terribly. It does have a pretty big benefit of walling Ponyta and Larvesta exceedingly well, and being a pretty decent option into Sun teams. It does have benefits, but you have to be very careful with them. That's the last of A tier, so now we're going to A-. And that leads us to the only viable ghost, Frillish. It's a special tank. It switches into Coughing, it switches into Natu, it switches into Porygon, and it takes the hits well. And it also can check Ponyta, which is pretty nice. Otherwise, you can spread a whole bunch of burns because it got Scald, it got Will-O-Wisp, and then because it also gets access to Hex, that allows its damage output to really skyrocket, because you can do stab 130 base power against something that can barely do any damage to you. It's pretty great. Its main issues are that it's not the fastest, and that Pharisee walls it really hard. It doesn't want to see Grookey at all, because even if it can like Will-O-Wisp or possibly Scald on the switch-in, Scalding on the switch-in is still good, but you don't want to have to take damage from Bonky Kong that you would otherwise not want to take. Like, if you cannot take hits from this, that's fine. That's what you want. Alright, then there's also the Choice Scarf set. This is weird. This was mainly used against Magby. And that was good, because it outsped and was immune to all of Magby's attacks. But now it's kind of awful. Because you got Porygon that really likes switching into that. Pawniard and Pharisee both like it because Pawniard can Sucker Punch a Choice Scarf Ghost type, And then Pharisee takes all of the attacks really well. And then also Marion can deal with it because it's a water resist. It's not fantastic, but it still has uses because, like, Fu doesn't want to switch in. Like, Fu, Coughing, Natu, Abra. I doubt that Carvana would even want to switch in. But, like, there's... How many water resistance here? Well, there's Pharisee, Marion, Porygon, kind of. Opposing Frillish, Staryu, Snover, and Moralol. And then, like, nothing else wants to take it. So it does have a niche as a pretty nice Scarfer. But I wouldn't recommend it currently because Magby got banned. Carvana also really likes coming in on this. Carvana's Crunch can... It doesn't always OHKO it, but it gets very close. And it just makes it very... Like, if this is not at full HP, it's Carvana food. You don't like that. It outspeeds... It gets a free attack, and then it gets a speed boost, so that can be quite a liability. Make sure you have Carvana check if you're running Frillish. Grookey, Pawniard, Magnemite, and Pharisee. I already went over those, essentially, but also, super effective coverage. Ponyta runs Wild Charge. Be careful. And then Abra and Natu. So... Abra... Oh, one of the things I actually probably should mention. And it's relevant for Frillish as well as Staryu and Marion. This can sometimes run Energy Ball. And Abra running Energy Ball can be a bit of an issue. Because it hits Frillish, Staryu, Drillbur, Mudbray, Onix. Marion pretty alright as a mid-ground option. Carvana. Like, it can do that, so you have to be careful, and this is one thing that it does not like taking Energy Balls at all. Also, knockoffs everywhere. It's a Ghost type. Ghost types don't like Dark type moves, and that really ruins its tank, how much it can tank, so be careful. Otherwise, it's a really good burn spreader and support Pokemon. It can switch into Coughing. It can allow setup sweepers like Tyrant, Grassy Seed, Grookey, and Agility Porygon to come in and start doing their thing. It's pretty solid, and you should definitely consider it, but also be wary of its downsides. And then we got Ponyta. So I was going to discuss why Galarian Ponyta is not used, and the main reason is opportunity cost. And what that concept is essentially, if you can use option A instead of using option B and they're mutually exclusive, and A does a significantly better job, why would you ever use option B? What do you have to give up in order to use Ponyta Galar? I mean, this set's kind of cool because you can Calm Mind stuff, but why not use the Berry Juice Attacker set to get a Flame Charge up and start Flare Blitzing into the entire tier? At which point they can't respond because you're 19 speed? Like, this is just so good in current meta because of how little fire resist there are. Like, there's Onix, and although Onix is a pretty hard stop to it, this gets high horsepower, so it can hit Onix decently hard if it tries to switch in. And then, what else? Well, there's Munchlax, but that's kind of manageable. And there's Staryu, but that gets hit by Wild Charge. And then everything up here, except for, like, Diglett and Porygon. Oh, yeah, and then, like, oh, what are the waters? Well, Wild Charge. So this can go into, like, Fu, Coughing, Natu, Pawniard, Abra, Grookey. It takes all of those really well. And it even appreciates Grookey's grassy terrain, because then it can't get counter-trapped. It can't get trapped in that counter-trap element. But it also appreciates the recovery that it gets. That's good, too. It just hits so hard and so fast with this 85 base attack, which is pretty phenomenal. And then this above average bulk, 65 special defense, 55 defense, 50 HP, better than Fu. It's fantastic. Like, this might get up to AT, like just straight up A later. We don't know. But it's definitely really good. Really, really, really good. So Flare Blitz, Wild Charge, Flame Charge, High Horsepower. Flare Blitz is 180 base power, and it just trucks into everything. Wild Charge is for the waters, High Horsepower is for the rock types, Tyrant and Onyx, as well as just being a pretty good option at hitting Coughing and Marionette, so that we don't have to take recoil. And then Flame Charge increases your speed, so you outspeed the entire tier, barring Scarf Diglett. I didn't mention Scarf Diglett before, but you can run a Scarf set on Diglett so it can outspeed these things, as well as other Scarf mons. It's very dumb. You could use this on... Diglett can basically go on any team. It's very dumb, very strong, very powerful. But after a +1 speed boost off of a pretty... like, that's not even a bad attack. 75 base power? That's not awful. And then you can get... like, if you're putting something really weak in the back, you can, if they have something really weak facing you, you can flame charge into it, and you have wonderful positioning, and they have to deal with this. Really, they have to deal with this very defensively, which is not great. It's just so good. You can also do an Eviolite set. It's sort of like what Foolish wants to do. You spread Will-O-Wisp. It has Flame Body. Oh, quick note about Berry Juice Attacker. I mentioned it before with Porygon. Trace copies Flash Fire, and sometimes it's much better to run Flame Body, because one of the best ways of dealing with this is Fu Fake Out in order to get it down a little bit, and then you can possibly burn it and ruin its chances at dealing with you, so that's pretty funny. Alright, so back to Eviolite set. It's okay, but I don't recommend it because it's attacking, like, it's how good its attack stat is really underutilized on the Eviolite set. Like, you still can run attack, investment, defense, special. Like, you have a lot more bulk, and Flame Body to spread burns. But I feel like it had the same problem that Eviolite Grookey has, of, well, what are you trying to support with this when you can just use this baseline and it's already really good? So, with that being said, this is not bad by any means, because it can take a lot of hits really easily and spread a whole bunch of burns across the team. It's not bad, but I wouldn't say it's perfect. Otherwise, what you have to worry about, you still have to worry about the bulky water types. Like, yes, you can use Wild Charge into them, but it creates a lot of head games, because, like, what happens if your opponent, like, they switch into a Marionette on your Flare Blitz, and then you try to Wild Charge it, and then they go into Pharisee, and then you try to Flame Charge or Flare Blitz into that, and they go to Porygon or Marionette. They have a lot of head games they can do with it. It's not fantastic, and you can still do a lot of progress with how strong this is, but you need to be careful. Diglett can outspeed it. It needs the boost. If it doesn't get the Flame Charge boost, it has to just kill something. Let's just say Pawniard. So Flame Charge wouldn't kill because it's too healthy, so you have to Flare Blitz into it in order to remove it, because you need it gone for your Scarf Frillish in the back or whatever. Then Diglett comes in and just revenge kills this. So, when it gets going, it's exceedingly good, but if it doesn't have that boost, it's not as good as it could be, and it can be revenge killed. Also, Trapinch takes a hit from it always, so you have to be careful there. Alright. Onyx can survive hits really well. It has weak armor as one of its abilities, so even if you high horsepower into it, or even if you have a +1, it gets up to 34 speed, because it gets 17 speed baseline, and it gets revenge killed by that pretty easily, which is unfortunate. Also, chip damage. Even though the Berry Juice is really good, it's weak to Stealth Rock. Be careful. Especially with Eviolite, because if you lose a quarter of your health every time you're switching it with a defensive Pokemon, you're not going to have a good time. Noctu can deal with this problem because it has Magic Bounce. This does not. Be careful. Alright, and then we get Staryu. Staryu is weird. Oh, actually, one quick aside. Another reason why Galarian Ponyta saw less usage is because, as cool as Psychic Mystical Fire is, you can run Mystical Fire on Pawniard, and like Mystical Fire is for hitting Pawniard and Ferroseed, But the thing is that Poniard takes one because of Berry Juice, and you know how I said that it gets Defiant? Well, now it gets a +2 boost. It gets a +2 boost. And because of that boost, it can now Sucker Punch or Knock Off into your team, and it will do a lot of damage. Get ready. Also, it can get statused very easily. It needs to run Calm Mind, Psychic, Mystical Fire, and Morning Sun. If you don't run, you always want Psychic, and you always want Calm Mind. But you can't really drop Mystical Fire unless you want to get walled really hard. And you can't drop Morning Sun because of how, Morning Sun is just that good at getting HP back and making it really hard to kill that you can end up walled really easily, and even then you get trapped by Diglett. So, also, your car food, its traits aren't anywhere near as good as an immediately threatening attacker that doesn't need any boosts and can sometimes use Flame Charge to make itself even better. Heck, even if your opponent has Fu, Coughing, Natu, Poniard, Grookey, and then Trace Porygon, that could be a team. You're already really threatening to that entire team without a Flame Charge boost because they don't have a dedicated Fire Resist. Porygon kind of suits the role, but if you get that low enough, you can just Flare Blitz into it, and it just starts wrecking. It's great. Whereas with Galarian Ponyta, you need to have your Calm Mind boost in order to be threatening. So you're kind of like a Crit Me Not Sweeper, kind of, but it's just not as good. Why use Galarian Ponyta and have to set up a few turns when you can just use regular, and it's just once and one and done. And sometimes you don't even need the one. Alright, disregarding that though, let's go back to Staryu. Staryu's next. Staryu's weird. It's not bad. It gets 30 HP, and that's important because you can sometimes run Rapid Spin Life Orb on this, and it only will get ticked out once per attack, and it's still really, really powerful because of Analytic. Alright, one sec. Alright, so Analytic. You get a 1.3 times boost if it's the last move in a turn. That covers switching. So if your opponent has Fu out and you switch in your Staryu, and this switches out to go into a Ferroseed, it will get a Life Orb boost on the attack into the Ferroseed, which is pretty good. Especially if your opponent's running Poniard and you Hydro Pump into it, you can do a lot of damage. Otherwise, alright, so offensive sets, you have Hydro Pump, Thunderbolt, Ice Beam, Psychic Recover. So Hydro Pump, extremely reliable stab move. You got Thunderbolt, you got Bolt Beam coverage, and then possibly Psychic if you want to hit Fu and Coughing. But Bolt Beam hits other opposing waters, Ice Beam hits stuff like Natu, Grookey on the switch in, Ferroseed to wear it down more. You can rarely go wrong with this. And then that's the offensive set. You can also run, instead of move 3, you can run Rapid Spin if you want to get rid of hazards to support stuff like Ponyta or Larvesta. And that's not bad either. So you want the special attack investment, but you also want to have the bulk. And the reason for that is that if you don't have the investment, Hydro Pump doesn't deal as much damage to stuff like Poniard or Ferroseed, well, among other mons, like Fu. And that's kind of bad. But on the defensive set, you want that HP defense, so that way you can Rapid Spin more reliably. It's a bit of a hard bargain, because you want to have both the offense and the defense to be able to dish out attacks while also being defensive. The good news is that on defensive set you run Scald. The only real difference between the two of these is you run Natural Cure on the defensive, so that way you can just deal with burns and stuff a lot better. You don't have the passive damage, which is pretty nice. Analytic deals with that. It's more offensive, and that means you can threaten things a lot better with the offensive set. Otherwise, you do a slight spread change. Otherwise, everything's the same. You want to run Scald. Well, defensive set, Skull, Thunderbolt slash T-Wave. So Thunderbolt's for hitting Mariani, Opposing Star, Frillish, Natu. But you can also run a Thunder Wave. And that's pretty fair. You want that because A, Grookey can use you as fodder, and you can possibly Thunder Wave it on the switch, ruin it. And also you're not running Ice Beam, which is a bit yikes. But also Tyrant, if it knows that you're defensive, it can set up a Dragon Dance. And are you really willing to risk the 30% chance? I don't think so. These sets are very, very similar. Both of them are... You're a special attacker that's very fast. It's one of the few things that hits 19 speed. Its main issues are that it has 4 move slot syndrome. It wants to have Water Stab, Bolt Beam, Psychic, and Recover, and Rapid Spin, but it can't always do that. Also, Frillish is, because it's a ghost type, it's a spin blocker. So that's a bit of a yikes. Also, Diglett can Revenge Kill because it's 1 point too slow. This one's kind of been trailing off, but the main idea is this is a pretty alright special attacker with good special attack, good speed, and can run either offensive or defensive, as well as being one of the two spinners in the tier. Blah 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 blah. It's commonly seen on other vested teams because you want your rocks off, and this takes it really well. It's also a 19 speed tier, so its main competition is Drillbur, and the reason why that's important is because stuff like Mienfoo can probably speed tie it, as well as like the 17 speed tier is kind of bad because of the speed ties, and also I think this might be a little bit bulkier. No, I think it's definitely bulkier. You run a bulkier spread on Staryu. For Drillbur, you want to have more offensive, so this can take hits a lot better. It definitely takes one from like Carve. It'll take one from Tyrant. It's much bulkier, and therefore it has added utility of rapid spinning away hazards, as well as status support, as well as recovery from Recover. You can definitely play around with this a lot. Rapid Spin gives the speed boost now, so you can go and do a pseudo Ponyta set with it, but you have to be careful of Grookey. Alright, let's go to checks and counters just because I'm thinking about it now. But Ferroseed and Grookey, Ferroseed deals with it so well defensively, and you don't want to stay in ever because Giga Drain. So even if you hit it with an analytic boosted Hydro Pump, it takes it so well and can probably recover back the damage anyway that it's not really all that worth it. And then Grookey, if you try to hit it with Hydro Pump, it's kind of alright, but the issue is that it threatens immediately back with Grassy Glide, and there's no easy way to deal with that. So, unfortunate. Fungus and Frillish. Fungus you rarely see too much, but you still have to be wary of it, because unless you're running Ice Beam, it walls it. So, or Psychic. But I don't think you typically want to run Psychic anyway. And even then, it's not strong enough because it can threaten back with a Giga Drain. And you lose progress because it gets its HP back, and then it can regen off damage, and you've just lost your Staryu, or at least a lot of health on it. So, electric type attacks you want to be wary of. It hard loses to Magnemite, especially if it's Scarf. Heck, even if it's Berry Juice, it can take a hit and then retaliate with either a Thunderbolt or a Volt Switch, and it wants to take neither of those. And then stuff like Porygon can Thunderbolt into it, so not great. And as I said before, Diglett outspeeds. This Staryu isn't bad as much as it's kind of unremarkable. Like, there are better special attackers in Porygon and Abra, and there's better defensive mons. Its main thing that you like it for is Rapid Spin, and that's kind of it. It still has really good speed and good bulk. It's just kind of mediocre, and that's unfortunate. It's still A tier because it's significantly better than like Larvesta, Mudbray, Onix, because of how good Water Stab is. Like, literally all of these mons, except for like Tyrant, don't want to take water type attacks. Like, Water Stab is really good except in like the forest. Like, water is such a weird type in this tier because it hits everything, barring like itself, really well, and then just Ferroseed and Grookey say hello, and it's just no, you can't. That's what makes it mediocre. It has potential, but that's kind of it. It's unfortunate. But next we have Das Pinch. Alright, so why is this Mon weird? Its speed. That's it. Its speed is awful. Despite that 100 attack stat and some pretty alright bulk, not as good as Fu, but like, it can take some hits. This is probably one of the ones I have the least to say about it. But you have Earthquake, First Impression, Superpower, Fent. Earthquake, it's great stab move. It hits a whole bunch of stuff. First Impression, you bonk Abra, you bonk Grookey, and then also if you need to revenge something that's really low, like a Staryu. Sometimes you can get Fu with it, actually. You can get Diglett with it as well, because it's bulky enough to take it. But all that stuff, you can First Impression back. It's pretty alright. Superpower lets you deal with Porygon, Pawniard, Ferroseed. And then you also get to deal with Onix, sort of. You get to deal with... Oh, Munchlax. That one's kind of important, actually. But hitting Munchlax is pretty good with Superpower. And then you have Fent. Fent looks like a really weird one to have, but there's two reasons for this, actually. The second reason came in later, and that was Carve, because Carve really likes protecting a lot, and because you know that it's going to First Impression, and because... Should I look at my calc up real quick? So if you get Trapinch, and then you get Carvanha, like even getting 6 damage off on Carve, that's like a third of its HP. A little bit less, I think. Yeah, it's one less, but just getting that much off and then having Carve protect because it doesn't want to take a First Impression to the face, that can still be exceedingly valuable. The other reason is because Sash Abra, so that way if it tries to protect and using a First Impression, you just feint into it and it loses the Focus Sash, and that's pretty good. But Focus Sash Abra is not as good, and you'd much rather have a reliable check to Carvanha than doing that, so it's seeing less usage in addition to its very low speed tier. Its main advantage over Diglett is its bulk, because what Diglett has is very large speed, but then it'll crumple like basically anything. It's very weak, but then this can take quite a few hits because of its pretty alright stats. Its issues are that Porygon can counter trap it, and Superpower lowers your attack every time that you use it, so it's not too reliable at removing. Natu walls, it's set really well. Grookey can come in if it's not first. So after the first turn, because of how First Impression works, Grookey can come in. So if it's not threatening First Impression, then Grookey can just deal with it. And on the most common Life Orb sets, it runs Protect anyway. So it's unfortunate. Water types really deal with this well. Got Staryu, Frillish, Marini, kind of. It does not appreciate Scalds. It does not appreciate any damage whatsoever. It's much... So, the issue... the best way I can put the issue down is that Diglett can come in multiple times per game and get a lot of advantage because of its speed tier. Trapinch can come in once and reliably remove something, and then it's basically dead weight. And that's really unfortunate. It's just not fast enough. Chip damage is also really bad. If it ever gets, like, spikes from Ferroseed, Duel's coming up. We'll get to the other spikes that are there. Like, it does not like taking any spare hits. It needs all the HP it can get if it wants to reliably trap something because of how slow it is. It's very sad. All in all, though, although it's kind of outclassed by Diglett, it still has to be very much respected. You don't want to take 100 attack Earthquakes. It's a good Antlion, but it's getting not as good. All right, so then final one, Tyrant. It's the premier Dragon Dancer of the tier. And it's... Oh, boy. The reason why it's so terrifying is because it's got Strong Jaw. Alright, so actually, let's go from the top. So, first off, Rock Dragon has a lot of resistances. It gets access to Dragon Dance. 48 speed means that it gets up to 15. So what that means is that you can outspeed a decent bit of the tier. No, you outspeed everything minus Scarfers. Like, oh, excuse me. This is probably another reason why Scarf Porygon got worse. At +1, Tyrant outspeeds a Scarf set. So, what are you going to do? Otherwise, so it's got Strong Jaw. 89 attack is really good. Like, Trapinch is running for its money because of how good this attack stat is. 77 defense means it's got pretty respectable bulk. And even 45 special defense is still good. And then pretty alright HP stat. So the weird thing is that it also has Sturdy. So if you want to be cheeky with Tyrant, then you run Sturdy Juice. And you can still Dragon Dance with it because of how good Dragon Dance is. And then it also has Strong Jaw. Gets Rock Blast, Psychic Fangs, Close Combat, Fire Fang. Rock Blast is for Focus Sash Abra as well as pretty alright Stab. Psychic Fangs, it's for Fu, it's for Marionade, it's for Coughing, etc, etc, etc. Close Combat Fire Fang, Close Combat's for Pawniard as well as Porygon. Fire Fang's for Ferroseed because Ferroseed lives 1. But then it also has a bunch of other really funny moves. It gets Crunch. Oh boy, it gets Crunch, which is also boosted by Strong Jaw. It gets Fire Fang, it gets Ice Fang, it gets Thunder Fang. It gets all the fangs, so it has all these really funny moves that you can hit your opponent with. So, I think it was in the Freeze Eye video about Little Cup Open Finals, is that Tyrant had a whole bunch of different coverage moves. That's what makes it so dangerous. You want to try predicting what sets it has? Good luck, my friend. But even then, like this basic set is already exceedingly threatening. You can probably remove Rock Blast for like Ice Fang or Thunder Fang, and you'd be pretty alright. But it's just so good because of how good Dragon Dance is. Get up to 22 speed, and then you're already at your 809 attack stat with a whole bunch of investment. Try a wall on this. Typically, the best way that you can deal with it is a whole bunch of switching around. You have to hope that it's Psychic Fangs, so like your Fu has to go into your Pawniard, and then you have to go back to like another Mon that can take the hit well. So that way, hopefully, they close combat and get lower defenses, and then maybe your Grookey and Pawniard can revenge kill. But this is, I'd almost want to say it's like top of A- tier, even more than Ponyta and Frillish because of how dangerous it can be. It's really fantastic as a Dragon Dance sweeper. Good luck dealing with it. That's the end of A- tier, and now we're getting into B tier. First, we get Dwebble. I feel like the main reason why you want to run Dwebble nowadays is not for the Shell Smash set, even though you can. Oh, actually, hold on. I forgot something about Tyrant. Let's talk about its checks and counters. It can get status really easily, so it has a hard time finding some setup opportunities. It can't set up against Pawn, Porygon, Natu, Coughing if it's running Will-O-Wisp. It can't set up against Ferroseed because of Thunder Wave. Grookey bonks into it. This can burn it. A lot of these things can burn it, status it, trap it. This can high jump kick into it. Averages a lot of damage. Like, it can't set up on a lot of these mons. However, if it ever gets one, it's really, really good. Also, Priority can deal with it, so Grookey, Pawniard, and Timber can deal with this really well. Timber has Iron Fist, Mach Punch, and that does well. Grookey has Grassy Glide, and then Pawniard has Sucker Punch, and all those can do really well into this. Its issue is that it has to be very prediction reliant, and it can't always KO everything that it wants to, but if it's in prime position to sweep, it will. Be prepared. Don't let this thing run over your team. Alright, now back to Dwebble. So, the main reason why you run it is for entry hazards. It gets Stealth Rock Spikes knockoff, so you get both of the hazards, And then you also have knockoff for extra utility. So like if a foo's bugging you, or if you're worried about timber. So timber gets defog. I'm not sure why, but if you're facing the timber, you can always knock it off, make it easier for something else to deal with it. You also have Rock Blast. So what really sets Dwebble apart from other hazard setters like Pharisee and Pawniard, heck, even Diglett. One sec. Is the fact that because it's bug rock type, and because it gets knockoff, it doesn't mind Natu being in front of it, because it can take a lot of progress off on Natu, and Natu can't do too much back. Like, you can knock off and Rock Blast into the Natu, and what are you going to do? It's very hard to deal with. With that being said, it crumples really hard to star you. Like, although it has some okay, like, you can run... It has alright bulk because of its HP, and its defense is really high, and then you have weak armor. It's really good at setting up hazards. However, it's a bit of a risky play, because if your opponent has like a Drillbur, a Timber, or a Staryu, heck, especially Staryu because it can counter lead, it'll just get rid of the hazards, and you've essentially just playing the game 5v6, and it's not great. With that, like, despite that, getting, rocks and spikes to wear down your opponent's team is really good. So one of the most popular hyper offense teams is called Canadian Spikes, and Dwebble is the hazard setter for that. And if you can get both Stealth Rock and Spikes up, it makes your opponent's job a lot harder, because they have to juggle dealing with Ponyta, Grookey, Carvanha. What was the other ones? Carvanha, Grookey, Timber, Ponyta, and I think you could use Calm Mind Natu if you wanted to. What else would you use? How am I blanking this hard in Canadian Spikes? Oh, Abra. I use Canadian Spikes so much in tournament games. But forcing your opponent to have to switch around all of your Mons because you have a lot of Spikes and Rocks damage is pretty fantastic. And even if they try to use Natu, who is, I would say, probably like the main form of hazard control, despite the fact it doesn't have defog, and it being beaten by Dwebble, it just makes Dwebble really valuable. This is definitely top of B+ tier for a reason. Its main issue is that you can't fit it on all teams, because not all teams really want to have Stealth Rock Spikes. Like, balanced teams, although they would probably appreciate the Spikes, they don't need it. They would much rather not be playing 5v6. So, there's that. You can also use Stealth Mask set if you want to. I don't recommend it. It's kind of bad. Rock Blast, Earthquake knockoff is kind of a very bad combination. Like, cool, you have, like, Edgequake, but Fu just takes the hits. Heck, Timber takes the hits. Like, how you break him through Pharisee, how you break him through Porygon, it's not working out. Like, it's just, like, all this other stuff is just too bulky. Trapinch can definitely take one. You do have Sturdy Juice, and Sturdy Juice is pretty A-okay, so that means you can get like a guaranteed Shell Smash off or a guaranteed knockoff, and it's very hard to not find utility there. But I would not recommend using Shell Smash. It's just not great. Entry Hazard Setter is much better, and it's very consistent, but only use it for hyper offense. It's not worth it otherwise. Alright, next we got Larvesta. So this one's kind of contentious because its quadruple Stealth Rock weakness is what really kills it. But it's pretty good. If, like, even if you play around the Stealth Rock weakness, it can do exceedingly well. Because you have, I think the main 6 that you run with it, well, main 5, you either run Mienfoo or Timber. Timber has defog, but Mienfoo is Mienfoo, because it has high jump kick, all the other stuff. Then you can run Staryu or Drillbur, Natu, Ferroseed, and Larvesta. So that's your 5. And then you can run something that's weak to Grookey, and then you have a pretty good team structure as is because of how well it can deal with hazards. And with Flame Body, Will-O-Wisp, U-Turn, Morning Sun, Flare Blitz, it can get a lot of stuff done. Its main usage is that Will-O-Wisp cripples Fu exceedingly bad, and then everything barring like, I don't know, maybe like Frillish and Mare can take it, but a lot of things don't want to have to take a Will-O-Wisp. They would prefer not to take the passive damage and the physical damage. They would rather not have the physical moves at half power. That's what it is. And Will-O-Wisp, even burning Porygon is good because you get slight chip on it, and that means it can't take attacks as reliably. And then you could get like Rocks Up. It just means that it gets ever so slowly. You have to play more careful with it. You can't just keep on letting it switch into attacks and then recovering off the damage. You have to be very careful. And then if you get into like Grookey, Tyrant, yes, this is Tyrant, this is Carbona. But if you get into one of those, I mean, probably the worst thing you can see is a Ponyta. But if you burn Fu, Pawniard, Ferroseed, Diglett, Carvana, Grookey, Tyrant, all of those are really good burn targets, and you can even get a possibility to burn them with Flame Body anyway. And then also you have a reliable recovery in Morning Sun, and then also U-Turn. So one of the things that can happen really easily is that if your opponent leads Fu, because Fu's a really good lead because it just matches up well against a whole bunch of stuff, but even if you do that and you try to like U-turn out on this, it can possibly get burned, and then afterwards you just get U-turned on. It can be exceedingly good. Its main issues, Stealth Rock. Once again, you have to play really, 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 really well around Stealth Rock. If rocks get up, this is borderline useless. It's kind of sad. Heck, well, the main issue is that if rocks are up, it can't switch into Mewtwo High Jump Kick, or Knockoff for that matter. So you have to get a free switch in order to get it in, and then like Morning Sun up, and then you have to, I don't know, U-turn around. If rocks are up and Larvesta needs to come in, you lose a lot of momentum. It's very sad. Diglett can use Rock Slide and kill this. Not from full, but if it takes like any chip, it'll die. It's very sad. Water types like its attacks really well. Ponyta really likes taking Will-O-Wisp and Flare Blitz. If it's Flash Fire, it just takes them, and then you are in a very, very bad position. All rock types are definitely really bad for it. Onix Rock Blast, Tyrant Rock Blast, Dwebble especially, because it can set rocks up or Rock Blast into it. So it has its niche for spreading a whole bunch of burn really quickly, because it can take hits, especially from Fu, burn passively, and then U-turn out of there for momentum. But you have to build pretty hard around it. Pretty good, not fantastic. Mudbray. Mudbray is like white bread in this tier. And that's just because, although it's really cool because it can do like Stealth Rock, and then it's got a Choice Scarf set that hits 22 speed, that outspeeds Porygon, and that's cool. And it's got Rest Talk set that's special defense and can switch into Coughing. It's just like, well, why would you use that over Drillbur? It's just kind of sad. Its speed tier is still good, because one of the most important things in a Coughing switch is being able to outspeed Coughing, and Coughing typically runs 12 speed, so this gets the job done. But like all the other ones, like Frillish has recovery, Drillbur has a lot of offensive pressure and gets guaranteed rocks, Porygon has recovery, Onix has rocks, it has weak armor, it's got Dragon Dance if you're really in a pinch. Heck, you can even run Munchlax and it gets Berry Juice, and then at that point, you just keep on taking hits and it doesn't die, and you keep recycling up and cursing. It's very hard to justify Mudbray as a choice. It also gets really hard stuff by not to. Like, The main issue is like there's all this other good stuff around it, and then this is still good because it checks like Tyrant. Diglett doesn't like it too much because it's got a lot of defense and then it got stamina to take a whole bunch of hits. It doesn't mind taking knockoff too much because stamina just gives it its boost back. And then it can check Ponyta, checks Tyrant. And then it's got really good Choice Scarf set because it's got Stab, Base 100 Earthquake, Trapinch, and Inner Tide. And then it's got a Rest Talk set, which can get really crazy. Because what happens is that with 236 special defense, I think you get up to 18... No, you get up to 24 if you have your Eviolite on. And if your opponent just has all physical attackers and they attack into it too many times, they just can't kill it because of stamina. And it has all this really cool stuff going on. And then it's just like, well, what about Drillbur, though? It's very sad. Yeah. Oh, Air Balloon Diglett, I forgot about that. Yeah. Air Balloon Diglett's not seen too often, as I said earlier. But also, you get to trap this. Congrats, you get Final Gambited, and also you can't use Earthquake into it. Oh, God. Bulky Water types also just eat it up for breakfast because they attack on the special side. And they can take the hits really well because of how much bulk they have. And Staryu always goes first because of its speed tier. Mudbray, you sweet summer child. You're not bad, you're just mainly forgotten. And it's kind of sad. Moving on, we got Onix. And Onix is weird, because look at that defense. It's absolutely beautiful. And then you look at its attack, and it's absolutely abhorrent. It has 3 sets, and all of them are okay. You got Sturdy Juice, Berry Juice Sturdy, you take hits, you Stealth Rock, you Explosion. You can run Endure to always get your Berry Juice, which is actually pretty nice. And you check stuff like Ponyta, Natu, Tyrant. If you want a tool to not lose to Hyper Offense, run Onix. It's just that, it's really good at dealing with that. You also get Stealth Rock, so that means you get to open up stuff on Ferroseed or Pawniard. You can have these T-Wave or Spikes. Dragon Dance, this one's weird because it's got this very disappointing attack stat. Exceedingly disappointing attack stat. And then you can Dragon Dance with it, and it's kind of okay because it gets Head Smash, Stab Head Smash. And then also gets Explosion. It has a surprising amount of breaking power, but the issue is that Grookey comes in and goes Bonky Glide on it with Bonky Kong, so... Like, it looks so weak on paper, and then in practice, like, I can switch into Coughing, I get a Threaten out Marionette with my Earthquake, Tyrant doesn't want to switch into me, Larvesta, Natu, Ponyta... And then I can still be threatening because I have Explosion, and then if I'm on the weak armor set, then that means I'm faster than the entire tier. Don't mess with me. It's so weird. Its defenses are basically unmatched, though. Weak armor set, I want to say, is probably the best one. And that's because the weak armor boost just outspeeding stuff like Tyrant, Ponyta is just so useful. Oh, also sometimes Larvesta will run a Scarf set, and that's kind of funny, but it's not great. But like Onix can stuff that too. It's got a lot of options, but it feels like for a lot of them they're not great. You use this defensively. I would not advise using Dragon Dance unless you're planning to be very cheeky. Also, it's Mean Foo Food. I forgot about that. One of the issues... So, although having a rock typing is really good for switching into Coughing, as well as threatening Natu and Ponyta, Mean Foo and Timber love eating this for breakfast. Rocks are perfectly fine for fighting types to deal with, and it's very sad. Also, Pawniard's Iron Head deals with this too. You can't switch in very easily. So, there's that. Also, it can't break over Porygon, and that can cause some issues because of Ice Beam, and it's not very good, especially defensively. So get ready for that. But also Grookey just Bonky Kong uses Bonky Glide and it bonks it and it dies because even though it's got 160 base defense, try taking a quad. Oh god, very weak to grass. Yikes, Onyx. Its defensive profile is probably the best though. Like barring Porygon, heck, even Porygon's not as good because of its slow speed tier, but like weak armor, and then you still have 190 defense. So like, oh darn, I'm now down to like, I don't know, 25 or hold on. Let's look at Onyx real quick. So like Onyx weak armor. Yeah, like even if you proc the weak armor, it still goes up to 22 defense. Like, ah darn, that should be bad if I took an attack there. Whoops. It can just take it. And like, do you even like? Oh, one of the best parts about sturdy and weak armor on the same Pokemon, especially with the Wobble, is: do I attack into this, or do I not want to attack into this? And that's the biggest question. Because if you're Sturdy Juice, that means you don't want to attack into it. No, I'm sorry. Sturdy Juice, you want to attack into it as hard as possible. So like you can. Oh, that's one of the best interactions. Is so Fu runs Fake Out, right? And one of the most useful things that Fake Out can do is that it breaks Sturdy. But if you break Sturdy, then you get the weak armor proc, and that means you're faster, and that means you can get a guaranteed rocks. But if you just high jump kick into Sturdy Juice, you're going to have a bad time because you've effectively wasted a turn. That's what makes this really tricky to deal with. Is it Eviolite or is it Berry Juice? Very creative. It's just that its attack stat leaves something to be desired, but also it can explode, so it's whatever. Coolmon. Good luck in using it. It's very good defensive. That's all of B+. Now we go to B tier. Archon. Oh no, this is the highest attack stat, but it's on Archon. So Archon is like epitome of B tier because its high is so good because 112 attack, Choice Scarf gets up to 25 speed. Fantastic. Dual Wing Beat, Earthquake, U-turn, knockoff. Try switching into this. You can't. You don't wanna. It has to be like very prediction reliant, but if it doesn't have to predict, may God have mercy on your soul. And then the issue is A, Defeatist, B, Rocks, C, Ferroseed, and then D, Pawniard. Despite the fact that it's a physical attacker, it gets dealt with by the steel types of the tier, so it's unfortunate, but it can still do a lot because of how fast Choice Scarf is. It also has a Berry Juice set, and that one's pretty cool because you got Hit Smash, and then you can do Acrobatics or Dual Wing Beat, depending on whether or not you want to be better with or without Berry Juice. You also get Substitute, so if you're behind that and your opponent tries to attack in, you're fine. So that uses up your predictions. Move 3, Earthquake Heatwave. Earthquake is for Pawniard as well as the poisons. Oh, niche interaction. Coughing's neutralizing gas neutralizes Defeatist, so that means Archon can really easily deal with it, and that's funny. But you can use Heatwave, and Heatwave hits into Ferroseed, and that's probably your worst matchup. So, yeah, that's actually pretty alright. But it has a lot of downsides. If you want to, it needs the proper coverage move. Mudbray can deal with this pretty well. If the Choice Scarf one doesn't run Heat Wave, like obviously it can U-turn or knock off, but then you can get a knockoff in return, and this is pretty fragile with 45 base defenses, and you're not running Eviolite on it. And then also Bonky Glide deals neutral damage, and that's not great, especially on the Choice Scarf set when you want it to just outspeed everything. And then, oh boy, and then you have to deal with Magnemite. Like, the main issue is that Choice Scarf's speed is fantastic, but you hate being locked into one move. Berry Juice's problem is that you're not fast enough. So you have to sort of pick your poison between Choice Scarf or Berry Juice. Neither are abhorrent, but you definitely have to build around it. It's very, very much the epitome of B tier. It's usable, but you would prefer something else. Then we get to... I'm going to go with Charmander Vulpix here. I'm putting both of them together because you don't see Charmander without Vulpix. There's no real reason to. And that's because it's the Sunsetter. And the reason why you care about the Sunsetter with the Heat Rock is because Charmander is your Sun Abuser. Because it has Choice Scarf Solar Power, and it has, like, decent enough bulk to take some hits. But imagine taking a +1 Sun-boosted Overheat. You don't unless you're Frillish or Staryu, and that's kind of it. And it's... You don't have a way to deal with it besides that, and even if, like, Mienfoo fakes out into this, like, cool, I can take Solar Power damage and it's fine. Excuse me. But it gets up to 17 speed, so that's really good. It outspeeds everything minus Scarf Diglett. So it's got a lot going for it. Its main issue is that it's very frail, and if you run into Flash Fire Ponyta, you are dead. It's exceedingly hit or miss, but you have to just be wary of it, alright? This is why you might want to consider running a Fire-type resist. Porygon typically deals with it, at least like somewhat okay, because it can at least take one because of how much defenses it has. Thunder Wave this in return and makes it useless. It's weird. It's very matchup fishy. Hope for no bad matchups. And it can do a lot there, but if you get a very bad matchup, it basically does nothing. Very much a glass cannon. Very unfortunate. Next we have Drillbur. This should probably be in like an A- tier, but this VR has not updated in a while. But the reason why Drillbur's good is because it's a 17 speeder, as everybody else is. It's got 85 base attack, and it has one of the best traits in the... Well, 3 things that make it exceedingly exceptional. First, Mold Breaker. You can set up rocks in Natu's face, which is great because that means that Natu's crippled for the rest of the game. Second, you have Rapid Spin, which, because it's buffed to increase your speed, that means that you can get rid of hazards and make yourself exceedingly threatening because you get up to 25 speed. And then thirdly, you have Edgequake, and it's coming off 85 base attack. Oh, well, I probably should have said the fourth one. You switch into Coughing super well, and because of Mold Breaker, like, your opponent has to be running Staryu, their own Drillbur, or Timber. So if you want to get rocks up, this is your boy. And you can pair it really well with Ferroseed, because then you get rocks and spikes. It's wonderful. And then even Ferroseed's like, yo, come on in, Natsu, take 25% because my boy Drillbur set me up. It's great. Its main issues are that it can't deal with opposing Ferroseed too well. Can't deal with opposing Porygon, Staryu, Frillish. Carve really likes doing stuff against this, and it's very hard for Drillbur to do stuff against it because it needs the speed boost to be threatening. Also, Bonky Kong, Bonky Glide, end of story. It's really excellent, especially because of its speed tier. And even with like all of the if you look at the EV spread, there's no bulk investment minus like 1 HP. It eats stuff from even Abra because of how much natural HP it has. It's great. Drillbur is a fantastic mod. But like, yeah, Bonky Kong and water types, it really doesn't like dealing with. But it's great. Try using it. You're guaranteed to have a good time. Oh boy, and then we got the boy, I would probably call this the biggest fall off. Heck, even more than Galarian Ponyta. Because at least with Galarian Ponyta, it wasn't that it just became bad, it was because I don't know if I want to say Cantonian, but Fire Ponyta is just so much better than it. Fungus is bad because Natu and Ferroseed exist, and it's one thing that would be really good is Spore, and if your opponent has Ferroseed and Natu, it's borderline useless, and that's kind of sad. It's supposed to switch into Fu, and it does so kind of okay, but Fu can knock into this, U-turn out, go into either Ferroseed or Noctu, and now it's useless and you've wasted a turn. Ugh. Especially if it's Ferroseed, because you can't, like, you want to Sledge Bomb into it? Nah. It doesn't take any damage because it's immune. Giga Drain, Quad Resist. Synthesis, I mean, cool, but you also have Regenerators, so what are you doing anyway? And then your opponent gets, like, they can either go U-turn with Natu, Psychic with Natu for free damage, or they can knock off into your team or set up hazards with Ferroseed. It's just a momentum sink, and it's very sad because it used to be so good, and Spore is still good as a move, but you have to get a very specific matchup. Hell, even Bonky Kong doesn't mind dealing with this sometimes because it gets acrobatics, and then it's just food for Ponyta. And even Carb is just, it eats it because of Psychic Fangs. Oh, dude, it fell off. It's just that it needs, like, a perfect matchup, and then it does so well because you can Spore something, make your opponent fight 5v6, as well as be a pretty decent Fu switch in. It's just that, like, its floor of how well it can be used is so often seen and so bad you don't use Fungus anymore. It's a sad state of affairs. And then we get into Magnemite. So, Magnemite. This boy's weird. He has 2 sets. So, first things first, he has a Trapper set of Substitute, Charge Beam, Flash Cannon, Rest. And essentially what that would do is that with the usual Ferroseed moveset, it can't break, it can't kill, alright, yeah, let me phrase this. So, what happens is that you get a free switch into this after Ferroseeds kill somebody or use, like, Memento Diglett on it. And then you sub up, use Charge Beam, and then once you've eaten your Slack Berry to get your speed boost, you rest. And because of how Ferroseed's rolls work, because of how weak it is, and because you don't have a Slack Berry to knock off, it can't, like, I don't think it can 3-hit KO you, possibly even 4-hit KO you. So all that you really do is that you just keep on taking knockoff and Giga Drain from it, and it doesn't die. And then you just get a whole bunch of setup because of Charge Beam. And because it's resisted and has such low base power, you get up to, like, +6 special attack, and you have +1 speed, get a substitute up, kill Ferroseed, and then sweep through your opponent's team. The issue is that if at any point your opponent just starts spamming status moves with Stealth Rock and Thunder Wave, which Stealth Rock has, what, 64 PP, something around those lines, and you don't have enough Charge Beam, substitutes, and rests in order to deal with that, then all that really happens is that you get, like, a kind of okay Magnemite. And I don't really consider this much of a set because any good player won't let it get the speed boost. So there's that. Now onto the actual sets. It gets Analytic, Magnet Pull, and Sturdy. And then Magnet Pull is using the Trapper set. It's got 95 special attack, which is pretty great. Also has Analytic and Sturdy. So Analytic is on the Choice Scarf set. And you can either use Timid or Modest because you hit the baseline of 21 or 22 speed in order to be good as a Choice Scarfer. And then you have Volt Switch, Flash Cannon, and Thunderbolt Steel Beam. Volt Switch, always good because you get momentum because it's already really fast. And that if your opponent doesn't run a ground type, then you can just keep doing that all day. Honestly, if your opponent runs a ground type, it gets significantly worse. Because then you have to predict every single time, are they going to go into their ground type on my Volt Switch, and then I get nothing? Or are they going to Flash Cannon? And then if they stay in with the current mod, then Magnemite dies. So it's either 50-50 City or some of the freest stuff I've seen in my life. Steel Beam is neat. I mean, you lose 50% of your max HP, and that's kind of fine because you're hitting so hard with 140 base power, it doesn't really matter. And then Thunderbolt and Flash Cannon are just good stab. So, what else to say there? Berry Juice is weird. It's Sturdy Juice again, as seen with Dwebble and Onyx. But it's meant to, like, take hits, which is kind of sketch. Like, you still have Volt Switch, Flash Cannon, and then the big one is Recycle. That's what Dwebble and Onyx don't have, is that you can just keep on getting the Berry Juice back,
and then you just don't die because you take the hit, you recycle the berry juice, and then you just keep this infinite cycle going of I regain HP, and then I have Sturdy active. Sturdy takes me down to 1. I get back my berry juice takes me back to full, and then repeat ad nauseum. And it can kind of take attacks, but not really well. Typically in move 4 you want to run indoors, so that way even if your opponent tries to get you into an uncomfortable position, you can take the attack, and then you're fine. Also, berry juice, if it's knocked off, recycle doesn't work. Very important interaction, and that's kind of what ruins this, is that Fu and Timber, kind of Poniard, they all want to come in, and then Pharisee's kind of fine with it too. They all run knock, and then if it gets knocked off, then it's just ruined. So that's bad. Best thing to do with that is like takes 1 or 2 weak hits, and then if you get to the point where you can come in on like another soft hit and it'll proc your berry juice, that's really good, because as long as berry juice isn't on you, as long as your opponent's facing you, then it can't be knocked off because you recycle it, use it, and then it's no longer on your Pokemon again and they can't knock it off. It's pretty interesting interaction, kind of annoying. It's important to know, especially for this guy, who we're going to talk about in a sec. But you got to know that interaction for this guy. Got to worry about ground types and fence types, like I said before. Ponyta does not mind steel attacks at all, and then Flame Charge can go really far, and you have to deal with it. So good luck. Grass types also like take. So there's also the prediction part. Heck, even some water types will like switching in if they know that you're going to go for a Flash Cannon. So if Drillbur and Frillish are on the same team, then Frillish can come on in on using a Flash Cannon, hoping to hit the Drillbur, and it can go wild. Now, it doesn't necessarily want to, but it can. But then Donkey Kong and Pharisee really like dealing with it because it resists all of... So Pharisee resists both steel and grass, whereas Donkey Kong resists electric. So it takes the attacks pretty well, and then threatens it with either Drain Punch or Knock. So overall, Magnemite is very hit or miss, but if you get the hit, it's pretty good. Alright, next we got Munchlax. The big boy. It's got like 2 sets, kind of, and that's the reason for that is because you sometimes don't run Curse and you just run 3 attacks, recycle, and use it as a special wall. But you want it because it's Curse. It's a Curse Sweeper, which is kind of funny. But essentially, what happens is that you proc your Berry Juice because this has 135 HP. It gets up to like 30-ish. So what you can do is you take a whole bunch of special attacks because of how good your special defense is. You curse up so that way your defense is better. And then you just don't die, and you just keep going. And then you get your berry juice, you recycle it, and then you get it back, and then you curse up, and then you can body slam and facade or fire punch your way out of the situation. And it's fine. Its biggest weaknesses are fighting types and knockoff. Also, if you run Frillish, this gets hard walled. It's very annoying for Munchlax to deal with it. Like, you can PP stall, recycle. It's funny. You also have to you also get to PP stall fire punch, which is also really funny. But it's just kind of sketch, and that's mainly because it's so slow. It has 5 speed. It gets up to 7 speed normally, and that's pretty bad because that means it gets outsped by literally everything minus like Trapinch and Pharisee. And that's not great when you don't want to take a knockoff, so it can be a bit of a momentum sink. With that being said, Curse Sweeper for the win. It's very funny, very stupid, but it belongs in B tier for a reason. Next we have Shellos. It's Crit Me Not Sweeper. I hate this thing. So, I don't know why, but they decided to give Shellos access to both Curse and Amnesia, and Sticky Hold. So with Eviolite, all that it does is that you can't kill it. It gets a whole bunch of boosts,
and then it uses Facade to sweep your entire team if you try statusing it. Hooray. It gets walled by Frillish because it's a ghost type, and then also you get like lucky with crits, or Bonky Kong uses Wood Hammer on it and it dies. I dislike this Pokemon, you should not use it. It's bad. The end. What's next? Timber. Finally get to talk about the Tims. So it has like 2 sets. One of them's not pictured here, but second set's kind of interesting. The main one that you use is the bulky attacker. You can use Iron Fist or Guts. It's kind of variable, and it's pretty good in that regard. But what it does is that you can Drain Punch, Knock Off, Mach Punch. Those 3 are basically mandatory. So Drain gets you HP, Knock Off removes Eviolite, and then Mach Punch revenge kills. So you can get stuff like Tyrant, Carvana, Pawniard, Porygon. It's got a lot of usage. And then you also have Defog, and that's an option for Ponyta teams, Larvesta teams, Archon teams. That's what you can do there. You don't always want to, but you can. You can run Thunder Punch, that's for hitting Mariani and Natu, and that's pretty cool. Also, you don't run max speed. You run, you get up to 12, and that's kind of fine. You tie with Coughing, and you don't really want to spend any more EVs on the speed, so it's fine. It's overall pretty, like, average, but the Iron Fist Mach Punch is what gives it a lot of value because of its revenge killing capabilities. It's pretty crazy. Iron Fist versus Guts is a pretty big question to ask yourself, because Iron Fist gets you better rolls on Tyrant baseline, but Guts allows you to beat Larvesta almost. It's weird. Also, you can run a bulk up set, and you do Drain, Knock, Mach, and then bulk up. And then you can have the same decision of Iron Fist or Guts, because if you run Iron Fist, then that means you're stronger to start out. So if your opponent wants to revenge kill you with, like, Abra, you can just Mach Punch it, and because of how frail it is, it dies. It's very funny. But then also Guts is significantly better, because then if Larvesta wants to burn you to try and deal with you, it can't. So there you go. Overall, it's kind of eh. It's cool, and it's got good utility, but its stats kind of let it down. It's got 35 SPDF, and although it's got good HP and good defense, it's just not bulky enough, and it's not speedy enough to compete with Fu. But the Mach Punch is very good. But then, like, Natu, Coughing, Mirini, Abrafungus, all of these, like, hard counter it, and that's what the problem is that as much as you want to be able to, like, just start sweeping through things with Knockoff, Drain Punch, Mach Punch with your bulk up set, Natu just says no, you can't, and you don't. Coughing, if you're burned and you have Guts, it removes that, so then you get half power, and that's bad. Mariani, obviously you have the Thunder Punch option, but it's just so bulky, and then it can either poison or burn you, and as well as knock off your Eviolite to make you easier to revenge kill, that it's very hard to break. Abra outspeeds an Okos. So, and then Fungus, it can Spore it, as well as takes his attacks pretty well. Otherwise, Justice from Timber, he's actually pretty good. Move him up to B+, please. Then finally, we get B- tier. Moralol. Moralol is really weird because it's essentially Fungus, but kind of worse. But that kind of makes it better. And the reason for that is that it was the exact same set as Fungus, but with one difference. It's Fairy type. And because it's Fairy type, that means it can hit Pawniard for neutral damage, as well as hitting, like, Fu, Timber. It actually hits... like, it hits the fightings for better damage. It also deals with Tyrant and Carvana, and that's why you like it. It's Spore, Giga Drain, Moonblast, Synthesis, Effect Spore, so you get the bonuses of Larvesta, but on, like, a fungus-shaped body. It's funny. But also you're pretty slow, so that's not great. But it stops hyper offense, because then Tyrant and Carve don't want to... They can't get as much progress because of your typing, as well as you having some pretty great bulk. Bonky Kong doesn't like it too much, but if it runs acrobatics, then it can break over it, and that's not great. But Fu doesn't like it. Heck, I think even... No, I was going to say Natsu doesn't like it, but it's kind of fine. I would prefer not to have poisons, so it's whatever. But... like, it has its usage, because it deals with hyper offense kind of well. But that's kind of it. It still has the same issues of losing to Natsu, losing to Pharisee. At least it can kind of deal some damage to Pharisee because of Moonblast, but it has a lot of trouble making progress along with Fungus. But it's like more actively passive due to Effect Spore, so you can't just U-turn on it with Fu. Like in the scenario before, it's like, oh, well, it comes in, takes the knock, and then Fu U-turns out into Natsu or Pharisee, and that's that. Well, then it's risking 2 chances to get status of Poison, Paralysis, or Sleep, so that's not great. Doesn't want to take any of those. Poison is probably the most acceptable, but you don't want it, so it's kind of bad. But with that being said, it's okay. Like, it's in B- tier. It could probably go up to B and it'd be fine, but it does not deserve to go anywhere above that. It's very sad. But moral is interesting. You can try to think about it, but it's very difficult. Don't use this if you're a new player. Like, use something from sample teams. Sample teams are your friend. Alright, and then next we got... I'm going to put the Hail Boys in here. Freeze, I bumped these up to B-. They were before C. But you just have your Hail teams. They are strictly okay. You have a Hail Setter in Snover. It's good because it's got a water resist, so that means that you have a good way of dealing with Staryu, which would otherwise kind of frustrate Igloo Shrew. But you got Blizzard, Giga Drain, Ice Shard, Protect, and then you got a weird spread because of how its stats are. But Blizzard, Giga Drain are a pretty good stat combination. Then you have Ice Shard for revenge killing Bonky Kong and Tyrant, which is always pretty nice. But Hail kind of auto loses to Carvana, so you got to be careful about that. They're also considering changing up Igloo Shrew's. So originally it has Wide Lens, and that's specifically so that you can do triple Axle 3 times because of how important it is to hit those attacks. And also you get Slush Rush, which means that you have to do 28 in Hail, which is pretty cool. And then you have Triple Axle, Earthquake, Rapid Spin, Swords Dance. So you have Triple Axle, which is a great stab move. You have Earthquake, which deals a lot of neutral damage. So that's pretty cool. And then Rapid Spin allows you to hit something that's really weak and then still be able to function outside of Hail, which is super cool. And this is one of the first strategies I tried out when I got into this tier. I was not good at it, but I liked Igloo Shrew, so sue me. Also, with Swords Dance, you can probably run Eviolite or Life Orb instead. Choose whichever one you think is better. Eviolite allows it to take stray hits better, but Life Orb allows it to punch some pretty major holes. It's crazy. You gotta be wary of like Timber, and then it doesn't take on Larvesta too well, or Frillish. But like, if it gets going, it gets going. If you can get it going and set it up properly, it can get a pretty nice sweep in. But if you want to use Weather, use Sun. It's much more consistent. Hail's weird. It's fun, and it's not as consistent. But it's like this. It holds this like little special place of like, is it kind of bad? Yeah. Is it funny? Absolutely. And that's what matters. And that's why we have Igloo Shrew and Silver in B-. Next we got Slowpoke, and then we're almost done. Wow. The best I can put for Slowpoke is don't use it. And the issue is that it's Water Psychic. If it was like Water Poison instead and it had this role, it'd be significantly better. But what it's supposed to do is that you can use Psychic Scald, Thunder Wave as a lot of utility against like Fu, Coughing, and then also it stops Shadow Sweepers like Tyrant. You can kind of deal with Carve. Then Grookey doesn't get free stuff on you. and it's all okay. And then also you get slack off and teleport, and it's like, oh, you got like reliable recovery, you got regenerator, you got your pivot move. Isn't that great for taking hits and then you go to another Pokemon? You think that, and then you remember this is weak to both dark and bug, so it gets U-turned and knocked off into all day. And even though it's got some good defense and good HP, it ain't taking those hits very well. So there's that. It's very sad, but you just sort of have to deal with it. Don't use Slowpoke. Although it's really good at checking stuff like Ponyta and Tyrant, it just can't do too much, is the issue. Like, it wants to have more bulk, more speed, probably more special attack to be more threatening because Psychic and Scald, but it just, there's so much that deals with it, and it's very sad. Despite its, like, fantastic bulk, it just is too passive. It's very sad. You can probably try to find a way to make it work, but it's probably going to bring you down. Like, what other pivots can you use? I feel like Natu and Porygon are probably the most similar because you can U-turn or teleport out. And those were kind of like that. And then also Fu's kind of a pivot in and of itself. But the reason why those are so good is because their defensive profiles naturally are so good. Because Porygon just checks a wide swath of the metagame, and then Natu is Magic Bounce plus Ground Immunity plus U-turn, and then if you want to be cheeky, you can run another set on it, and then your opponent will not be the wiser, so what are they going to do about it? Whereas Slowpoke is just guaranteed to be like just sort of sitting there. It's kind of sad. You wish it would do more, but it can't. So in conclusion, Slowpoke's kind of bad. And then we got the last one. The very last one at the end of the list, and that is the boy himself, Stunky. I'm not going to go C and below for now, because those are all much more edge cases, but... This is the last one, and it's... I feel like you could even go, like, B tier. It's actually pretty alright. So what Stunky does that a lot of the others don't do is that, although it's a Life Orb user and it has to go like max HP investment because it doesn't have the special little trait that Carvana has, or Staryu, or Diglett, it has some pretty amazing offenses. So it has Crunch, Sucker Punch, so that means it can threaten things really well with Dark-type moves. It also gets Play Rough, so if you want to switch in your fighting types, you can't do that. If you want to switch in Pawniard, good luck. If you want to switch in Ferroseed, oh, well, you could do that on Play Rough, but what about Fire Blast? It'll come in and hit it immediately afterwards. It's really hard to wall, funnily enough. Like, even... Let me calc this real quick. So, calc... Stunky... Porygon... Defensive... Yeah, Crunch, it doesn't do too much, but it's still, like... It needs to stay above 18, so if you get, like, 7 damage on Porygon, and even then you have a chance to defense drop, like, Porygon needs to stay pretty healthy if it wants to be able to deal with this and switch into it. So, there's that. But it just deals so well with dealing neutral damage with Crunch and then being able to blast through Ferroseed, which would otherwise wall it, and then possibly Pawniard with Fire Blast. Magnificent. It's priceless. Actually, that even lets it deal with, like, Morlul. So that's interesting. Also, it gets 18 speed, which is pretty cool. Aftermath... So the funny thing is that with against Fu, and this is kind of important, is that Play Rough into Aftermath, I think, always kills. I'm not sure why No! Alright, so like Stunky, and then we go Mifu. So Play Rough does 16, and then Aftermath... No, come on. So then Aftermath deals 1/4, and then 1/4 of Fu HP is 5 damage. So that means that Play Rough deals uh, 15 out of 16 times, enough damage to kill after Aftermath. So if you ever want to just like remove Fu because you can, play rough into it, don't miss Aftermath with Stunky, and it's gone. And that's kind of funny. Yeah, but that's all of them. That's all of the B rank and above in the SS Level Cup VR. I might cover C and below, but that's going to definitely have to be a different video. Alright, well, thank you very much for staying this long, and I hope that this helped you in some way. I'll see you later.